Thank you, Mr. President of Habitat Assembly. Your Excellency, Honorable Dr. William Samuel Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya. Your Excellency, Mr. Slumber Songwane, Vice President of the Republic of Botswana. Honorable Raymond Mayor Falcon, Secretary of Agrarian Ministry of Land and Urban Development, SEDATU, of Mexico, and also the President of the United Nations Habitat Assembly. Mr. Lee Juanhua, Under Secretary General of the United Nations Departments of Economic and Social Affairs, representing the Secretary General of the United Nations. Madam Zainab Hawa Bangura, my sister, Director General of the United Nations Office at Nairobi. Heads of delegations, Your Excellencies, parliamentarian, ambassadors, permanent representatives, and members of the diplomatic corps, mayors and local government representatives, representatives of the UN Habitat Partners, the private sector, and civil society organizations, distinguished delegates, members of the press, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, karibuni sana Nairobi. Habari ya usubuhi. Welcome to the second United Nations Habitat Assembly. This morning, we mark the completion of a full cycle of our governance structure. Let me congratulate and thank Member States for this achievement and for your support to UN Habitat. My sister Zainab Hawa Bangura, the Director General of UNON, thank you for all the support and arrangement from your team. We look forward to working closely with you to highlight the improvements to this beautiful campus to enable us to convene member states in the future. At this second assembly, we are coming together at a time when the world is facing multiple and interrelated crises. In February 2020, the world was in lockdown because of COVID-19. The socio-economic fallout has intensified inequalities and fueled conflicts in every region of the world. All is happening when humanity is facing a triple planetary crisis involving climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. As the Secretary General said, unless we act now, the 2030 agenda will become an epitaph for the world that might have been. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is very appropriate that our second United Nations Habitat Assembly is starting on the World Environment Day. It is significant because the climate goals, the Paris Agreement, and our aspirations to keep global warming within 1.5 degrees can only be achieved if member states prioritize sustainable urbanization as the basis of sustainable development. We are grateful for the first time 50 ministers of housing and planning met in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, to ensure that we mainstream and prioritize a just transition of our cities and communities for the sake of future generations. The reality is that impact of extreme climate events, conflicts, natural disasters, global pandemic, and the cost of living crisis are felt first and foremost in cities. Their secondary effects, often long-term in nature, and are also visited upon urban areas. Multi-dimensional inequalities continue to deepen between and within countries and territories, weakening the social contract that forms the foundations of our society. Your Excellency, President Ruto, I am very grateful for the continued support of Kenya for UN Habitat, especially we are celebrating 45 years in Nairobi, Kenya. Kenya, under your leadership, continues to be a beacon of hope. As you know firsthand, those of us from humble beginnings understand how adequate housing and urbanization can deliver a better quality of life. The more well-planned and well-organized, the more people we can uplift from poverty. Unfortunately, humanity's over-reliance on carbon and consumption is not only killing our planet, but also leaving some 3 billion people in inadequate housing. Even in the most advanced countries, an increasing number of citizens are homelessness. They are joined by 1.5 billion currently residing in poor and unhealthy housing. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the challenge before us is enormous. The only way we can achieve positive and transformative impact on the ground is not to go it alone, but to embrace multilateral action. Here, I would like to quote a Swahili proverb that reads, "Unity is strength, division is weakness." To answer the call of Member States to set priorities, we have taken guidance from Member States at the high-level meeting on the implementation of the new urban agenda last year. We are also grateful for inputs from ministerial roundtables at the 11th session of the World Urban Forum and at COP27, respectively. I have put forward UN Habitat's priorities, including on adequate housing, climate adaptation, localizing the Sustainable Development Goals, and better urban crisis management. They correspond to the UN Habitat Strategic Plan that was approved by Member States in the first assembly. We thank the Committee of Permanent Representatives that pronounced on the robustness of our strategic plan despite COVID-19. We appreciate the guidance from the Executive Board to extend the strategic plan by a further 2 years to align with the rest of the United Nations system. Before I conclude, I wish to acknowledge the considerable support and wise counsel we have received over many weeks and months from members of the Executive Board, the Committee of Permanent Representatives, and the Bureau of the UN Habitat Assembly. Let us flip the script on urbanization. We need practical and pragmatic ways to transform our cities into champions of zero waste. We need to formulate policies that guide countries towards carbon neutrality. We need to harness the talent in cities and communities to reshape financing to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We need Member States to prioritize national and local cooperation as the basis of a just transition. Let us never forget human rights and the UN Charter as the basis for sustainable urbanization. President William Samuel Ruto and Vice President Song Wane, representing President Masisi, I thank you for your presence at the second United Nations Habitat Assembly. I thank you for championing sustainable urbanization, and I humbly submit the request from this plenary for you both to carry the torch for a better urban future for all on the global stage. I thank you. Asante sana.
Thank you, Madam, for the very wise words and the assurance that this organization is now back on its right track and can go nowhere but forward. We will now have a pleasure of listening to a very nice program of art of Music Foundation, which is a musical group called Ghetto Classics, a very unique orchestra which uses music education to provide the youth with opportunities to better themselves and their community by giving them the life skills that come with the discipline of studying music. Your Excellencies, Vice President Sowani and President Ruto, I hope you don't mind the upcoming very short interlude to prepare us to hear your words. We will now hear from Ghetto Classics. Distinguished delegates, you will agree with me that this has been a very impressive statement by these wonderful children. Let's give them a round of applause again. Thank you, Ghetto Classics. Let me also thank the Ambassador of Belgium, Mr. Peter Madame, who sponsored this performance. Ambassador, thank you very much. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my distinct honor and pleasure to invite His Excellency Vice President Zwane and Botswana, who is a strong supporter and friend of not only the UN Habitat, but of the United Nations, including in the Economic and Social Council, Landlocked Development Countries Group, and in the Kimberley process. Mr. Vice President, we will feel very honored that despite your busy schedule, and you could find time not just for UN Habitat, but for the United Nations as a whole. Thank you, and you have the floor.
Thank you.
And many here. First, let me recognize Your Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya. Let me recognize Honorable Romain Meyer Falcon, the Secretary, Agrarian, Territorial and Urban Development of Mexico, and President of the UN Habitat Assembly. Recognize honorable ministers here present. I also recognize Ms. Bagwara, Director General Union. Madam Mohadi Sharif, Executive Director of the United Nations Settlements Program, UN Habitat. Allow me also to recognize all of you, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends, and ladies and gentlemen, safe to say, all protocol observed. Your Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, President of the Great Republic of Kenya, and Ms. Rachel Ruto, distinguished heads of state and governments here present, Excellencies, the Director General of the United Nations Office in Nairobi, Ms. Bangura, Executive Director of UN Habitat, Ms. Samona Mohad Sharif, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. Allow me on the onset to thank His Excellency Dr. William Ruto for inviting His Excellency the President of Botswana, Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi, whom I have the honor to represent here today. Sadly, our President's absence is due to the passing on of his dear mother, Ms. Precious Maseo Masisi, on Saturday night, June the 3rd, 2023. As the nation mourns her death, we pray for Almighty God's comfort to the family, relatives, and friends. The theme for this assembly is, as we are all aware, a sustainable urban future through inclusive and effective multilateralism, achieving the sustainable development goals in times of global crisis. End of quote. It comes at a crucial time. It comes at a crucial time when the world is grappling with environmental crisis, at the same time recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in cities and human settlements, where people are highly concentrated. The theme is apt as it underscores the need to develop global solidarity to address global challenges, including the rapid trend of urbanization. This new form of solidarity will overcome challenges we are all facing due to increasing vulnerability of people's livelihoods from rural to urban areas, triggered by such issues such as climate change, conflict, and financial crisis. It cannot be business as usual. We need to inspire the coming generation and make sure that prosperity is based on values of social cohesion and humanity, while leaving no one behind. Our efforts require complementary solutions and concerted efforts from all, including continental and regional bodies, governments, policymakers, civil society organizations, religious leaders, and communities. That is how we build and strengthen resilience. The African continent, which has the highest urbanization rate in the world, is expected to reach the urban transition by 2030, with half of the population living in urban areas. We can change that. Urban transition offers great opportunities which this assembly must address. In most of our countries, rapid urbanization gives rise to housing deficit, growth of informal settlements, inadequate urban basic infrastructures such as energy, health facilities, transport, water, and sanitation services. These are worsened by lack of capacity for proper planning, governance, as well as financial constraints. All these problems indicate policy and implementation failures and contradict our principles and commitments to the new urban agenda. Excellencies, Madam Executive Director, Africa, if urbanization does not come with digital economic transformation, mindset change, and the industrialization dynamic as expected, it will be a missed opportunity. There must be a linkage between sustainable urbanization and job creation, livelihood opportunities, and improved quality of life. Urbanization without adequate productive jobs will jeopardize not only our development efforts, but also peace and security. Many governments are still contending with managing the rising expectations of citizens that stem from rapid urbanization and delayed socio-economic transformation. The unmet expectations of the people have contributed to growing frustration to the elderly people, people with disabilities, and particularly the youth, who demand a better tomorrow. Let us learn from the mistakes that others did and change the paradigm in Africa. Let us strive to reverse the trend with well-managed and planned urbanization that ensures sustainable development, good governance, dictates that our technocrats in the relevant disciplines and professions must up their acts to deliver on the promises that we made to our people. Botswana is ready with other member states to demonstrate the relevance of urbanization as a mega trend and to compare notes on policies and programs towards transforming our states, to raise awareness and advance the concept of resilience and sustainable cities. The planning and development of resilient cities and human settlements has become a priority and should be based on solid partnerships among institutions, including the private sector, in and outside the Southern African region. The expert leadership of the United Nations is pivotal to the strategic thrust and action. I also urge that as African countries, we commit to elevate the African urban agenda at the level of the African Union. Together, we can leverage urbanization as an engine for economic transformation. In this respect, I would like to seize this opportunity to urge the UN Habitat to adhere to the United Nations General Assembly mandate and strengthen the regional and sub-regional collaboration with other international organizations to amplify the implementation of the new urban agenda, especially in Africa. Regional economic communities and specialized regional entities can be the anchor of regional solutions and collaborations to promote sustainable urbanization building on the new framework of the African Continental Free Trade Area that requires viable cities and to be effective. Excellencies, before I conclude, I wish to commend Ms. Mamouna Mohadi Sharif, the Executive Director of the UN Habitat, for her sterling leadership. She has tirelessly spearheaded key initiatives amid positioning the organization as a leader in sustainable urbanization. You can continue, Madam Executive Director, to count on Botswana's support to fulfill this important mandate. Finally, I sincerely hope that this second session of the United Nations Habitat Assembly will renew our commitment to implementing the new urban agenda with renewed vigor, determination, and visibility at the national levels. I thank you. Asante sana.
Our condolences to the family of President Masisi and Mrs. Masisi, please. Mr. Vice President, I am grateful for your thoughtful, provoking address and for your country's unwavering commitment for social, economic development and finding enduring solutions to poverty. I thank you. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor and pleasure to invite our host and president of the beautiful country, His Excellency President Ruto, a leader who has been a supporter of UN Habitat, to inaugurate this second session of the UN Habitat Assembly. Mr. President, we are truly grateful for your magnificent attention and you have paid to UN Habitat. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please, let's take our seats. Your Excellency Slambas Sokwane, the Vice President of the Republic of Botswana, representing President Masisi. Your Excellency Roman Mayor Falcon, the President of the UN Habitat Assembly. Director General of the United Nations Office at Nairobi, Zainab Hawa Bangura. Executive Director of the UN Habitat, Maimuna Sharif, my sister. Honorable Ministers and Heads of Delegations, Mayors, and representatives of local and regional governments, delegates, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Nairobi. On behalf of the people and government of Kenya and on my own behalf, I am truly delighted to have the honor to welcoming you to this warm and beautiful land in Kenya and to our capital city of Nairobi, the globally famous green city in the sun. I hope you have already experienced our people's legendary and that you will find some time to explore and enjoy the attractions which have earned us the name Magical Kenya. Maybe at this point it is important for me to tell you maybe 3 things that are important for your stay in Nairobi. Number 1, this is the city, the only one in the world, with a closed canopy forest on one side, the side where we are. This is also the only city in the world that has a national park in the city with wild animals, elephants and rhinos and lions and cheetahs. And just for your information, you may find them in the street sometimes because they break off from the fence of the national park. Please be careful because they are wild. They are not domesticated. And lastly, many of you, at the end of Kenya is the home and the cradle of humankind. This is where the earliest remains of man have been traced. So when you find yourself feeling at home and having a problem going back to Europe and America and the rest of Africa, just know that you are at home. So let me welcome you home. In fact, we are considering removing all requirements of travel. Human Settlement Program UN Habitat was inspired by a deep commitment to pursue economic development together with sustainable urbanization in harmony with the preservation of our national heritage. The international community's decision to locate this critical organization here is therefore out of recognition and emphatic endorsement of this commitment. Our experience in balancing the imperatives of industrialization, sustainable urbanization, and ecological responsibility as fundamental components of socio-economic transformation has had its challenges and setbacks, but we are persuaded now, more than ever, that not only is it worthwhile and feasible, but it also enhances the efficiency, safety, beauty, and livability of our cities. Even now, challenges exist with variety and on a scale that is unprecedented. The world is emerging from a devastating pandemic whilst grappling with a relentless economic crisis driven by geopolitical tensions as well as the triple planetary crisis of pollution, loss of biodiversity, and of course, climate change. As a consequence, millions of people throughout the world have been adversely affected, including through threats to life and also threats to livelihoods. In addition to normal migration to urban areas, millions of people displaced by the recent social, economic, and political upheavals joined the poor, vulnerable, underserved, and marginal segments of our urban populations. For better or for worse, the world population has reached 8 billion people. 57% are expected to increase steadily in the coming years, but urban populations are projected to rise even faster. In the global south, the rates will be even very youthful, presenting a novel set of challenges and opportunities for national economic and urban planning and general development. Urban centers have always held the most intense concentrations of both best and the worst human possibilities: wealth and poverty, well-being and suffering, dignity and misery, all in one ecosystem. As a result, they are also the theaters of the starkest inequalities in human opportunities and human outcomes. The explosion in global populations as well as urbanization has immense implications for global production and consumption, with humanity poised firmly between trends and practices likely to overwhelm the planet's capacity to support life on one end and clean, green, efficient, and abundant sustainability on the other end. Fundamentally, this gathering is one more opportunity for the global community to confer and reflect about the progress made in imagining new possibilities for the sustainable provision of opportunities and amenities to promote the flourishing of nearly 10 billion human beings, whilst enhancing the Earth's capacity to support all life on it. Urbanization is an economy's ultimate test of efficiency, inclusivity, resilience, and sustainability across all goods and services. Huge demands for basic goods is always accompanied by tremendous pressure on energy resources and the environment. The connection between prosperity and ecological sustainability is always strong and direct. How we perform in this test depends on the type and quality of decisions, choices, strategies, and policies that we make and pursue, which in turn reflects the depth of our deliberations and attention to the agenda in forums like this one. Our progress in affirming the fundamental right to decent housing is critical to the achievement of sustainable urbanization in terms of SDG number 11. Recognizing this imperative and realizing that more than half of Kenya's population will live in urban areas by 2050, we have integrated universal housing as a critical pillar of the national bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Into the housing program, we have further mainstreamed sustainable urban practices of green building, green spaces, adoption of low-carbon energy use, including low-carbon transport solutions, as well as urban agriculture and effective waste management. The governor of Nairobi informed me this morning that he made sure that all the delegates were transported on buses that do not use fossil fuels. That all the buses that were used to transport delegates here were using green energy. In addition to these measures under our urban resilience program, we are restoring degraded landscapes and ecosystems through a robust program, which includes increasing Kenya's tree cover from 12% currently to 30% by planting 15 billion trees over the next 10 years. Our capacity to coherently pursue these vital objectives has been significantly bolstered by the government's policy to mainstream sustainable development goals generally, and more pertinently, number 11 on sustainable cities and communities, and number 13 on climate action into national development planning and implementation. A key barrier to our aspiration for sustainable urbanization happens to be the very impediment to efficient, sustainable climate action in the global South and Africa, and that is sufficient and affordable financing. As a result, we are unable to effectively pursue all the opportunities in sustainable urbanization and leverage them to promote the broader agenda of economic transformation, climate action, and sustainable development. Our discussions must therefore pay due attention to the fact that the prevalent unjustness of the international financial architecture and the discriminatory practices inherent in development financing are iniquitous insofar as they directly and indirectly exacerbate the vulnerability of the majority of humanity. It is time, therefore, to correct this systemic injustice to enable us effectively mobilize multilateralism to achieve global net zero emissions, avert a climate catastrophe, and achieve sustainable development goals. Let us apply ourselves to these imperatives and ultimately make a stand on an effective, sustainable, inclusive, and just vision for the UN habitat. I acknowledge with profound gratitude the progress UN Habitat has made in refining and championing the deployment of effective multilateralism in addressing the challenges of human settlement and promoting sustainable urbanization. For this reason, I believe it is necessary to reiterate here of September this year here in Nairobi its position in preparation for COP28, which I hope is going to be the last COP for us to host, where we expect to articulate our agenda in a strong, clear, united, and effective voice. I take this opportunity to welcome you back to Nairobi for the summit. And I hope we will all have the resolve of making COP28 the last COP that we are going to hold as humanity. I am told that there are preparations for COP29. I think they should be cancelled. Because it is possible for us to agree on a framework that will bring everybody on board. And as a continent, we will be going to COP28 with a clear mind on what we need to do and how Africa and the global South can work with the global North, not as adversaries, but as partners to be able to resolve the climate crisis and present ourselves the opportunity to have a win-win outcome that has no finger pointing. I am a very strong believer that with the right investments, Africa can present the opportunity to decarbonize global manufacturing and industrialization and provide for green growth. This is not an occasion for us to do the usual, North versus South. I think it will be irresponsible of us to continue that conversation. The South is as in danger as is the North on this matter of climate change. None of us is safe. And therefore, we should act in concert, we should act together, and we should seek a win-win outcome. The second session of the UN Habitat Assembly is now officially open, and I thank you.
Mr. President, words cannot express our sincere gratitude for the kindness and the profound words you have shared with us, and for finding time to inaugurate this second session of the UN Habitat Assembly. I thank you. Distinguished delegates, we have come to the end of the first part of our inaugural meeting. I would like to
and industrial parks, KIPES. These counties participated out of their own volition. I must say, to begin with their own county resources, as part of the MAT program, the sharing for sharing towards productivity and towards jobs. This is money belonging to county governments. In normal circumstances, we are used to national government and county governments haggling over resources. This is the first project where counties volunteered to donate resources and their money because they actually believe in this program. As we come to the end of the financial year and the passage of the finance and the appropriation bill and also the estimates, we are now going to move to the second phase where, to the best of the information I have from the Council of Governors, all the other 33 counties have indicated that they have already allocated, appropriated money in the budget so that they can also join this journey. So we are here today as part of furthering that cooperation to create jobs, to increase incomes, and to increase our national productivity. But one voice has been missing in that conversation. That is the private sector. That is why today we have brought here all our 3 leading business management organizations, the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So this tripartite arrangement is now taking shape. The national government on one side, the county government on the other side, and now the private sector who actually do the actual work. So why we're here today, Your Excellency, is to be able to understand each other and to give a chance for the private sector to catch up, because for the first time, government, both at national level and county level, is actually ahead of the private sector. But you cannot do this without the private sector. So we are here today to give the private sector a chance to catch up, to be part of this journey, so that together as a country, all regions of this country, all the counties, all the different persuasions and backgrounds coming together on something that is not disputed. So we are here today to focus on 7 value chains: the leather value chain, the textile and cotton value chain, the pyrethrum value chain, the automotive value chain, the housing value chain. All these value chains are what we have identified as part of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda as having the highest potential of lifting this country in terms of getting out of the lower middle income status to the upper middle income and create jobs. So let me take this opportunity to invite the private sector to make a presentation of how they see them working with the national government and working with the county government in this journey towards productivity, incomes, and jobs. And to present the private sector is none other of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Madam Carol Kariuki. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Excellency, all protocols. We're going to start this conversation with a presentation, and that will be done by Anthony Mwangi from KM. And after that, we'll have a panel where Your Excellency and Chair of the Governors Council will join in, and I'll join in. And then from there, we'll be able to call a presentation on those sectors, touching very briefly, and it'll only take 10 minutes, and then we'll move into the panel. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, the President, Excellencies Governors, CS Moses Kuria, other CSs, I'll present very high level on those 7 value chains, and I'll do that very quickly. You'll forgive me if I churn numbers, but we are here to talk about those numbers. So let's go to the first slide. So, Your Excellency, On 19th of October 2022, we sat in this same room and you challenged us to move from contribution, 7.8 contribution to GDP to 20%. To 20%. And that is what these value chains will do. And the wisdom of selecting those value chains, and of course they are much more than that, will be able to, okay. Thank you, June. So we'll be able to move that contribution to 20%, as you said, 20 by 30. But what does that mean? That means that you're talking about 5 million jobs. We're talking about contribution, not only 1 trillion today, but 5 trillion. Let's go to the next slide. So these are the value chains that you're going to talk about in that order, starting with cotton. Next, please. Next. So a market of 300 million people. This is what we consider as our domestic market. The 5 countries in East Africa. These are the number of textile companies that we have in Kenya. But if you look at on the lower end, 85 billion worth of imports of apparel, of garments is what you're doing. 19 billion is what you call mitumba. Now, people say that every bale of mitumba you import, half of it is unused, so perhaps you could be losing 9 billion out of that. Okay, let's go to the next one. What is the aspiration? So how we have organized this presentation, number 1 is a status, lay of the land. Number 2 is the aspiration, what is the art of possible? And number 3 will be the interventions that we require. If you look at that, this is only local textile industry. 200,000 new jobs in the factories. We have not even talked about the farmers. 40 billion savings in the imports that we're making today. That billion of those local value chains we're talking about could be realized by backward integration, or what people call vertical integration. If you go to the next one, that is the apparel export. Today, we are exporting apparels worth 550 million US dollars. That is what the export would look like. But we have to make sure that, and we'll go to the next slide, we have to make sure that new facilities are available. And allow me, because I have only 10 minutes to go through this presentation. So what do we need to do? We need to fix Naivasha, we need to fix Dongokundu as soon as possible. We need also, because one of the areas that has a problem is the textile mills. 40% of the cost is power. We need to give them a special rate of about 5 cents US per kilowatt hour, and they'll be able to mop up the cotton. Revived cotton ginneries, I think they are 8 in number across the country. So Kikomi is there. Some of them may not be functional now, but this is what will unlock this sector. Let's go to the next one. Leather. We, as Kenya, have the 3rd largest herd of livestock in Africa. But if you look at what we are doing with our leather, and Mr. President, you have sat in a meeting and you know the numbers more than many people, is that 3 million hides collected, half are lost, eaten by dogs, others smuggled, half processed, 70% of that exported, but we need to do local value addition. This sector can actually transform this country. Majority of the people who play in this sector are actually SMEs. Every county represented here, they have livestock, and this can be replicated across the country. Let's go to the next slide. So what are the aspirations? Can we process the 90% of the hides and skins that we produce? Can we produce 15 million shoes for every year for our children who are going to school? If, and Rao is here, he will tell you that a cow has 30 square feet of hide, an average cow. If you slaughter that cow, you sell about 50,000, 60,000 shillings. If you make shoes from that 30 square feet, you make 20 shoes, is almost 100,000. So, Mr. President, we can encourage Kenyans to slaughter cows for hide, not for meat. And it is possible to do that. We can move the contribution today 15 billion to 75 billion. And that is just scratching the surface. 100,000 jobs can be made, and these are actually people across the country, because people are wearing shoes all over the country. Let's go to the interventions. What do we need to do? And there's a lot of high-level detail work behind this. This is just very high level. Kenani, I think this has been a story for a long time. We need to fix this. I think 90% of the work has been done, so it's just to finish the 10%. Karioko Common User Facility. Many people may not know that government has invested in a common user facility in Karioko that can make 75,000 shoes a month. It has remained unused because county, KLDC, we need to fix that. It is a state of art. We can make the shoes that we have here from Karioko. Mr. President, when we met before, you said you can invest in 10 others across the country or 47 others across the country. This is what is going to unlock this sector. And then, of course, improve the quality of hides and skins. Let's go to the other value chain. Pyrethrum. My governor, Her Excellency Susan, is here, and you'll be interested in these numbers. We used to supply 90% of pyrethrum globally. Today, we are merely at 2%. But when we have started this conversation, these numbers have started stacking up. Because now from 819 million, that is 77.4% growth year on year between 2021 and 2022. So putting the efforts together, that 77% can grow even to triple. Look at the other number, 6 growth, 100% growth in export value from 51 million to 360. This value chain, we used to do this 40 years ago. We used to do this 30 years ago. Why can't we do it now? Let's go to the next slide. So what is the aspiration? What is the art of the possible? We can build this from today, 900 tons MT to 10,000. But look at the numbers, how we are going to move the numbers. Billions to the farmers. Look at the number of households that we can impact. The revenue in billions in terms of export. Looking at that growth of 6-fold and driving it. And this is not the no-brainer. We can do it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So what do we need to do? Just giving farmers access to the seedlings. Let's just give farmers access to the seedlings. Today, even if I wanted to help where I went to school in Timboroa, slopes of Timboroa, there are no seedlings. So we need just like what Your Excellency have done with BT cotton, we need to do the same on pyrethrum. Let's go to the next one. Farmer. And farmer is very, very interesting. As you can see, that is only our local market in billions, 273, that is what's addressable market. 70% of the drugs that you consume here are imported. 60% of those drugs are generic drugs, meaning we can make them right here in Kenyan soil. We need to go and knock doors of the people who make those drugs, encourage the people who are making those drugs here today to make more of this. We have not even touched Africa. We have unique tropical diseases within this side of global south, and perhaps this could be the hub of that innovation. Let's go to the next slide. So what is possible? If we only touch 5% of African market, which is 1.8 trillion, let's call the total market. If you only look at that as addressable market is only 5%, which is very low ambition, we can go to 88 billion. These numbers are possible, and these numbers, we have cracked them with the sector and saying, if you're granted what you want, what would you do? Let's go to the second value chain. So what do we need to do? We need to give incentives to the local manufacturers of pharma. Because today we are competing with a global, because these are big and heavy investment. they cannot be able to compete with the global manufacturers. Either we bring the global manufacturers here, but as we do that, we give incentives. Let's go to the next value chain. Edible oils. You've been very vocal about this, Your Excellency. The import of what you call CPO, crude palm oil, is $1 billion US every year. That's what we have, 1 or 2, perhaps even more than that. We have these companies, 13 local processing companies, fairly doing very well, 100,000 jobs in the value chain, including packaging and all that. This is one of, when you do backward integration, is what you can stop reducing or start reducing the import bill on this value chain. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So what do we need to do? Is it possible to start moving palm oil to other oil or to other oil seeds? Is it possible planting our own palm oil? Studies have been done. The Lower Tana and the whole of Western Belt and Lake Basin, we can be able to do edible, palm oil or palm. Across the fence on the side of Uganda, they have done about 60,000 acres done by Kenyan investors. So we met with Her Excellency Gladys Wang and say, give us 100,000 acres. And we start thinking about how to do that. And our members are ready to do that. This is possible. But we cannot, again, expect the same companies to buy the land. We need to think about how do we facilitate them to get that land. Let's go to the next one. So I've already talked about the solutions, and these are just some of them, but there's a huge potential here. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Housing, I don't think, Your Excellency, we need to talk about this housing because you know more than us about this one. Yeah, and I can see P.S. Hinga is here. So this one, we are going to fly over it. I think what we are seeing, the picture is even smaller than your picture that you have. So allow me, Your Excellency, not to talk about housing because I know P.S. Hinga, I could be in the panel that will talk about that. Let's go to the last one. I think the last one is automotive. And this is an interesting value chain. In 2008, former President Mwai Kibaki, God rest his soul, his government just tweaked one item in the policy, remove the import duty of 250 cc's and below, and just because of that one line, the explosion that we see of motorcycles and the amount of jobs that motorcycles have created. Motorcycles today, there are 3 million boda-bodas operating in Kenya today. But we can go further than that. What if we now decide we are going to assemble those motorcycles here? What if we do and say we are going to CKD, complete knockdown kits here? Again, you will have proliferation of manufacturing, small-scale manufacturing facilities across the country because motorcycles are across the country. This, Your Excellency, also is something that can be done. There are people, we've already started manufacturing here, wire harnessing, which is now being done here. There are parts that we are going to do, and also for the new vehicles. If you go to AVA in Mombasa, they are doing complete knockdown kit of Hilux trucks. They've started doing the ones for even Marco Polo bus, which is a luxury bus. So there's a lot that we can do on this value chain. Okay, next. And I think this, we don't even need to overthink about this. It has been done. We just need to replicate what has been done elsewhere. And I think, Your Excellency, this was the last value chain. And mine was just to show the numbers. We have detailed work that we have done on this. This presentation is on behalf of all the private sectors. We have collaborated with the MITI, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. They are fully involved in this. We want to thank you. And just to leave everyone with one thought. We always think big. We always talk big. As we think big, let us, Your Excellency, start small, but start now. It is possible and we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. Your Excellency, you've heard the details of only those 7. Since we're celebrating 60 years since we had our independence, only about 7 value chains have grown this economy. In agriculture alone, we can have about 30 more. Then bring IT, and we will have much more. Then bring automotive, as has been said. But I want us to have this conversation. So, Your Excellency, Mr. President, Dr. William Ruto, allow me to invite you into this panel, to join us in this panel. And allow me to invite the Chair of COG, Her Excellency Anne Waiguru, and our moderator for today, Eric Latif, who will join us and ask a few questions. And as we brief to Your Excellency, the way we want to conduct this panel today, apart from Eric Latif, who will ask us some hard questions, some of the responses we will give between ourselves with the COG is from our members here. So I know the Chair of COG will be calling some of the governors to respond, and I'll also be calling some of the industry leaders in those value chains to give some interventions as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, President, thank you for joining us this afternoon and for also having this conversation with the private sector. We also acknowledge the governors. Thank you very much for joining us as well. As we begin this, Your Excellency, the 7 value chains that we've talked about this afternoon, value chains that you've identified, value chains that you've had a conversation with governors about, and also with the private sector. I just want to ask you to set the scene in how these 7 value chains can transform this country's economy with the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. What is it that these value chains can do, and how can they transform?
Thank you very much, Latif. Madam Chair of the Council of Governors, my sister Caro, ministers present, governors present, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We structured, when we went out to the people of Kenya to ask them how they would want their government to attend to the issues that are of priority and important to them, a couple of issues stood out. Many people talked about jobs. People wanted an opportunity to work. Many people in every part of Kenya say there must be a plan on how to engage the millions of young people. Many people wanted agriculture to pay. Many people spoke about the agricultural produce. Whether it was leather, I remember in Kajiado, a lady who spoke in Kajiado said, we are burying our hides, we are burying our skins. In many parts of Kenya, that was the practice. I remember I was in Mandera, same thing. Many people, for example, when you were in Nakuru, you remember Susan, many people talked about pyrethrum. They said, we used to make money from pyrethrum. We went to school with using money we parents get from pyrethrum. What happened? And many of the value chains, whether it is cotton, we went to Elgeyo Marakwet, people were asking us, what happened to cotton? We have a ginnery somewhere, I think it was down in Baringo down, where they said the ginnery has died or something. We went to Kitui, and it was the same story. So the value chains is part. These value chains are part of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda because it came from the people, number one. Number two, we decided intentionally to arrange the budget in line with what we consider to be the deliverables that will respond to what the people of Kenya wanted. If you look at our budget, we have deployed in these, I think 8 value chains, we have deployed 260 billion Kenyan shillings, right from production through aggregation, through value addition, through processing and manufacturing, all the way to export. Because for a very long time, it was disjointed. We didn't look at organizing resources using a value chain approach, so that if you invest in production, you must also think about, okay, what happens when production is successful? You must plan for the next thing. Then if the production is good, you must think about storage. You must think about aggregation. When you have aggregated, what is the next step? How do you reduce post-harvest losses that account for 40% of all our agricultural produce losses? We need aggregation, we need value addition, we need cold rooms, we need processing, and we need to access the market. We need to take it to the next level. So that is the essence, as you asked me, that is the essence of how the value chains are related to the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. And we have had many meetings on all the value chains. We have had a conversation, for example, about housing. You know, housing is not a new program. We started this housing agenda in 2018. And unfortunately, we didn't get the results we were looking for because we were unable to make some difficult decisions, which we intend to make this time round. And I hope that we can do this together with the private sector. That's why this meeting is very important. This meeting is important because we have the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. We have KEPSA in our midst. We have Kenya National Chamber of Commerce in our meeting. These 3 organizations have already opposed my plan on housing. And I'm asking myself, good people, yeah? The interventions we are making is so that we can promote manufacturing. How can the Kenya Association of Manufacturers be opposing manufacturing? It doesn't make sense to me, good people, yeah? So that's why we need to have a candid conversation, because there is nothing new we are discussing. Nothing new. Everything we are discussing today, we have been discussing for the last 15, 20 years. The thing we have not been able to do is to make the decisions to move us forward. And you see, I am very amazed. I received the Prime Minister of Singapore. The great place we keep talking about. Oh, you know, Singapore, they were with us. You know, they were we were all in 1960. We were the same level. Today, Singapore is in the first world. Singapore was a slum like Kibera. All of you know that. You've seen the pictures. Singapore was like Kibera. But they made some difficult decisions. And that is why they are where they are, and we are where we are. It is as simple as that. Between us and Singapore, the gap is the ability to make decisions. So how can we be celebrating Singapore? You know, they managed to overcome the housing challenge. 85% of the people of Singapore today own a home. Less than 5% in Kenya own a home. Right? So we are celebrating Singapore because they made a decision on housing. We don't want to make the decision in housing And yet we want to become like Singapore. How is that going to happen? Not even by miracles, my friends. So I would really want to listen to us, you know, because, I hope I'm not being a bully. I'm just, maybe I should just say this slowly. I really want us as governments, the county governments have stepped forward, and I must congratulate the county governments. Out of 47 county governments, I think 42, 43 have already identified land for housing. Is it true, Hinga? Let us clap for our counties. They have stepped forward, you know? We have cracked the numbers. We've gone back, we've gone forth, we've done everything that we could. I was in Homa Bay. Gladys is there. I was with her, you know? At least the housing program in Homa Bay, I think, is now on first floor or something. I was in different parts of Kenya. Now, good people, we have to be intentional. We have to be deliberate. We have to be practical for us to be able to move forward. Number two, let's go to leather. We have discussed leather many years, you know. Today, I was supposed to go to Kenanie. When I heard the story of Kenanie, I just cancelled because it is the same old story. Oh, you know, we are still doing this. Oh, you know, we are still... It's just a circus. We need to stop the circus. You know? We need to stop the circus and get on with what we must do, because the numbers are here. You know, our whole leather industry, despite us producing 3 million hides every year, 3 million skins every year, 18 million hides every year, we are still importing leather products, almost 10 billion every year. It is madness, isn't it? Right? And what is standing between us, and Rao will tell you, Rao is here, he's had this conversation with me many times. How do we face Rao and the leather industry that we are going to continue importing because we are unable to make some decisions? That whole exercise is standing between us. Today, we are generating maybe, I think, 17,000 jobs from the leather sector. We can generate 100,000 jobs with very minimal investment, just making the right decisions. Same thing, textile. It's the same story. I am very happy that there are many counties who have stepped forward, especially on the cotton value chain. And I have instructed Moses Kuria and team that we must get you the correct seeds for us to begin the journey to bring back cotton to where it is. We are now doing $500 million. It is a fraction of what we can do. And unfortunately, even with that $500 million, we are still importing almost 80% of the raw materials we are using to produce what we are selling to America. Just imagine how much money we would be making if we were using our own cotton. And we should be able to use our own cotton, good people. And it doesn't need rocket science. We just need to make the right decision. That's why we are putting money in cotton in our budget. In production, we are looking at ginning. We are looking at the whole value chain until we have the product that is good enough for our export processing zones and special economic zones. Same thing in edible oils. I had a conversation with the governor of Busia, and I'm very happy with what the governor of Busia is doing, because he has managed to mobilize the community to think about edible oil. We have a whole 100 billion Kenya shillings we are spending every year to import edible oil, which we can produce in Kenya. We've talked this over and over and over again. I sent this Moses Kuria to go to Indonesia so that he can go and I am happy the president of Indonesia will be coming here next month so that we can sign the necessary instruments for us to do, if not as good as Indonesia, maybe better. Let us go to Bairethram. I have called you, Susan. Si nimekupigia simu? Nimepigia ule gavana wa Elgeyo Marakwet, Wesley, if he was here. Nimepigia gavana wa Wasingishu. I have tried to connect them with what is that company called? Kentegra and all the other people who want to buy because of people now realizing that synthetic pyrethrin is not the direction to go. Everybody is coming back to what we produce natural. We need to position ourselves as a country. I have had many meetings with the ambassador of America. They have stepped forward to say they will provide a market. You saw the numbers, the billions that will go to our farmers, the billions that will go to our processors. But we need to stop the talking. We just need to stop the talking, and we need to get on and do what we must do, you know? This good English we keep talking here, you know, numbers, you know. But when decision time comes, we can't make the right decision. We do this. I don't know what I was supposed to say, but anyway, my friend, I am so passionate about this thing. I am impatient with ourselves. We cannot continue to do this. We need to move the country forward. You know, and let us have a candid discussion.
It's time for moving the talk from talk to action. And thank you very much. You know, just like CS Moses Kuria said in his opening remarks, the conversations have happened between the national government, the county governments. You've had agreements on this. Today is an opportunity for the private sector then to come on board and to present what they feel ought to happen as facilitation for them to be able to participate very well in this. Let me come to you, Governor Anne Waiguru, as Chair of the Council of Governors. The conversations that you've had held at the summit with the President, and then also, of course, in the Council itself, and discussions that need to happen. What is it that counties are doing and have done so far in these 7 value chains to get the ball rolling, so that we move from the way the President is saying, we move from talk to action? What are counties doing to act on this?
Thank you, Eric, Your Excellency, and the private sector, colleagues, governors, all protocols observed. Good afternoon. Counties have been in this conversation since this government came to power. And not only have we been in the conversation, we've also been working backwards to ensure that whatever it is that is in the policies and in the manifesto, especially of the government, and specifically to do with manufacturing and agriculture and trade, that we are ensuring that we are aligning our county integrated development plans to the BITA program of the national government, because that's the easiest way to get funding for the things that we require. Now, what most of us have heard is about the KIPES. You have heard that we have the county aggregation and industrial parks, where we are partnering with the Ministry of Trade to set up industries, both at the small scale and medium and large scale at the county level. What you don't know is that this was an answer to prayer for very many counties. Kirinyaga, for example, had been talking about it for a very long time, but we never had the resources. So we had kept pushing it forward. Now this government came and made it the priority. So we're only required to put in a certain amount of money. The national government will provide and then give this support of the engagement with the private sector, both locally and internationally, so that to ensure that we have the markets. What are we doing? Apart from setting aside land for the industrial parks, which you have seen advertised and has been mentioned, And apart from ensuring that we have adequate land, not just for what we're building now, but for expansion in the future, all these county governments, and would have been more, Your Excellency, it's just that the notice was a bit short, and yesterday was Madaraka, but we're about 15. I'm trying to trace them. I was trying to see where they're sitting. All the county governments you're seeing here, and many that are, and the rest who are not here, we have all identified our value chains. We haven't just identified our value chains from drawing it from a hat. We have looked at what it is that we've been producing, and that which we really would need to move to the next level in terms of processing and value addition. I will give you an example of Kirinyaga, and it's not one of the value chains that's listed here, but avocado oil, I think, is avocado oil is one of the edible oils. And in Kirinyaga, for example, about 4 years ago, we started giving seedlings to farmers for hash and fuete, which has increased the production of avocado by over 4 times. Now, you will hear a lot of complaints about these avocados because, oh, there's no market, and when there is market, the price is very low. We are being exploited by the people that who've been brokers who've been coming to buy. But now, because of what we are doing with the industrial park, we are going to be expecting that we will have, for example, as an industry, someone aggregating at the industrial park for export, and also a medium-sized or large factory for processing avocado into oil that is used for cosmetics or is used for cooking. And we haven't just said that we are looking. We have been in the process of engaging potential investors. They're already knocking on our doors. When they hear there is an industrial park, people are coming and saying, I can do this. And we've done the same as well for the tomato value chain. Kirinyaga is one of the leading producer. It is the leading producer of tomatoes in the country, 60,000 metric tons, and we can do that twice a year. And a lot of that tomato, over 40% goes to waste because we haven't been able to store. Until now, we finally see light at the end of the tunnel with the KIPES, because in the KIPES, there will be the cooling facilities, Your Excellency, which you suggested that every industrial park must have to be able to store the tomatoes. So that's just in a nutshell. So working backwards for all the value chains that you have had here, and the governors will be speaking for themselves to tell you what it is that they are doing with respect to the specific crops that we are dealing with. But it's not just about agriculture. There's also the issue of manufacturing, for example, pharmaceutical. That doesn't require maybe the production in agriculture. But I was just having a conversation with His Excellency just now in the holding room, telling him that he may be aware that this country imports saline water. We don't produce our own saline water. We import saline water. So every water that is used in hospital for drips or for eye drops, it's imported. Yet we have rivers. Between me and Governor Ses, we have Nyamindi River, which has the cleanest of. Why don't we have a saline water factory somewhere between Kirinyaga and Embu? That's an example. But this KIPES is a step towards that, and I must thank His Excellency for driving this agenda, and the minister, he really pushes us. And sometimes we complain, but we are getting there. We are getting to ensure that we are working backwards to provide what the farmers require, the seeds and all, and then going all the way down to ensuring that we are providing space for industry and for private sector. And today we'll be looking forward to hearing what it is they have for the counties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. And Carol, I want to come to you to hear from the private sector. We've seen the presentation by Anthony, what the potential is. The private sector is therefore aligned with the entire vision that the president has. But then, what is it that you need done so that you can get on ground and start doing these things in all these counties that are prepared? What does the private sector need today?
Thank you very much. Let me first tell the president, you're not bullying us. We are aligned. And whatever the issues are, these conversations will sort them out. And we'll be able to get to that. And if you remember when, during the manifesto, discussions, when you met us, we did bring to your attention about one of the value chains, housing, and how exciting it was for us to see the SMEs and the big companies coming together and creating that value chain, and what the transformation of lives of a small Jua Kali association and their families, of what that had happened. So it's not lost. We're going to work on it, and we will get there. So be assured. And we've worked for many years together. I always remind the president that he's the first minister who ever called me during coalition government on a landline. And so I know his way of working. So, so I'm excited that we're having this conversation. And as KEPSA, we're able to bring all the sectors together for you, whichever sector. And this is even to the governors, that if you need to meet the sectors, you don't have to keep wondering which association, which subsector can do this. Call us, we will rally them. If you need only one sector, then you can call one sector. But if you need the sectors around, we will bring all of them to you. So I needed to first begin by assuring you that, and then to say what you have said in terms of the focus, that we agree with, and as private sector, we are here to support as a partner to government in development, as we've done over the years. So as we are looking into these value chains, I look at some of the challenges that maybe we are facing as a country. And I think sometimes we forget as a country and blame the government, but we forget that there are global challenges. You know, we are all facing inflation as a global, as a world. There's a war, you know, and maybe half the time some of those things are what affects us here, but we don't pick them up and we think it's our own challenges. So part of that is what I just wanted to say. For us as a country, as private sector, is to look at and say, as the world is going through these challenges, what opportunities are coming up? And we saw that with COVID. You know, Kenya was able to rally quickly and come up with solutions. You know, our factories, just Betty and others, transformed their factories to producing PPEs. You know, we moved quickly and we started saying, what are the supply chain issues that we needed to do? So again, a moment like now has come to make sure that these value chains work. And this is our commitment to you. Let me begin by just saying that, and picking from where Governor Igoro has said, and she used the example of tomatoes. You know, Kirinyaga alone, not only is it number one, it can supply all the tomatoes we need, not for only eating, but for paste, which we import as a country, but also anything we need in the value chains of tomatoes, and contribute 2 billion Kenya shillings in revenue in 1 year. You know, and if we did that with each of the governors seated here in terms of your value chains, 2, 3, many of you, the countries you come from, can do about 2 to 3 value chains. You can imagine we will not need to borrow a cent for the infrastructure. From independence, our infrastructure was all extractive. It all faced out to our colonial masters. Now it's about integration. We don't have to borrow anything to do that infrastructure if we only did the value chains. So allow me, Your Excellency, as we have said this and we've said all the positive things, what are some of the pinching areas that are affecting business as we move into these value chains? And so I'll call a few and give them a minute each to just say, if Mr. President, your government did this for this value chain, then what you have asked for, we will. And we'll hold them accountable. As I call them, let me say something that your CS challenged me, and you need to help me with your CS. He gives me very high challenges. He said he wants 500,000 jobs from the private sector for internship. And in a week, I think we have managed to secure commitments and pledges of 150,000. But ask him to go a bit slow on us so that we move on this agenda. But we are happy for the challenges. So let me, the governor wants to say something before I call the, okay.
Before sorry, Excellency, before you call the private sector, because I thought we were just doing opening remarks and then going to the different sectors, allow the governors then to first talk about their value chains before then we hear the response from the private sector, because I thought we were still at the opening remarks. If you'll allow me, I will ask Governor Susan to talk about pyrethrum, and then I will ask Governor Wanga to do cotton, and maybe mention something on edible oils. And then after that, Governor Sicily was also to input on edible oils, mostly, I think, from the nuts, macadamia, and also the...
We might need some affirmative action.
Sorry, Your Excellency. For once, Your Excellency, the shoe is on the other foot. I hadn't actually even realized, but they're the ones who volunteered, but you'll be happy to know that we have Governor of Wajir. Ahmed will talk about leather, representing mostly the ASAL counties, though we know that the leather industry is not just from that side. Governor Badilisha also has told me that they used to produce pyrethrum, and there are certain interventions that they would require. So that for the first round, if we can do that, and then Governor Lusaka will also come in after that. So if we may request that you do 1 minute each, and then we can move them back to the private sector. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for this opportunity. And for me, really quickly, pyrethrum is also something that together with Your Excellency, we have been very passionate about. And the reason for that, without going into numbers, because I'm sure you've seen them, and I like to pride myself or pride Nakuru as the home of pyrethrum. You can imagine that a few years ago, my numbers, by the way, were saying 80% globally. They used to get that from Kenya, but I've seen from, I'm sure your numbers are better, it's 90%. And now we are only at 2%. So you can see the level of opportunity that's in there. But also I'm glad to see that in the last couple of years, we've woken up to the reality that we really can do well. From being out there with the farmers, I know initially we sort of as a country perhaps mismanaged a bit the bit about payment to farmers, and that is what made many of the farmers stop doing pyrethrum. And some of them challenged me and they told me, you know, if we plant potatoes and we don't get a market to sell them, I can feed the potatoes to my children. But on the other hand, if I plant pyrethrum and nobody buys the pyrethrum, kind of can't eat it, yeah? So that was sort of the logic, and they moved away from that. But from where we are, Your Excellency, we actually have a very good block of counties. Beginning with myself, we have West Pokot, we have Elgeyo Marakwet, Laikipia, Meru, Nyandarua, Kericho, Bomet, Trans Nzoia, and Uasin Gishu. Oh, Nyamira, sorry, I'm sorry, plus Nyamira. So together, we are forming a really good block there, and I want to say it here, and I believe Brian and Dave are in here from Kentegra, who have been very helpful in bringing farmers on board to continue or to agree actually to plant pyrethrum, and we've been out there together on the ground. And from those farmers who have been able to do it, really, Your Excellency, you can see the difference. We went out there, we would measure it, they get some receipts and they pay them within a week or two, and the farmers were telling me you can even use now the bursary money you used to give us to do roads, because with those receipts, the principals in the schools accept their kids, and when they are paid, they pay. So it's a big deal, and it's coming along. We are pushing it. From the CS Moses Kuria here, we've had a lot of discussions, and from our pyrethrum producing counties, all we ask is you join with us as we are doing with the KAIPs, get us some money so that we can get some money for farmers. Myself plus the other governors, what we have done on our part is add money in our budgets for the seedlings, because a big part of the challenges has been that our farmers don't have the seedlings or the good seedlings. I use Kentegra a lot, for example, because I've worked quite a bit with them and I've seen the kind of extension services they are giving to the farmers, which is really critical because they need to sort of understand the best practices. So inadequate funding has also been a big deal, post-harvest losses, pricing has been poor, but now with quite a bit of players in this market, we are doing well. We are doing quite well, diseases and pests, and the poor infrastructure, which we are working on. But to combat that, we are, like I said, putting in our budgets money to help the farmers, which together, hopefully, the national government will help us a bit, and together we can get this moving. And we have quite a few players as well from the, like I said, the Pyrethrum Processing Company of Kenya, Kentegra, Africam, botanicals, all green and all that. In addition to the seedlings, we are also providing, in partnership with the stakeholders, some of these partners here, we are providing modern dryers for this pyrethrum for the farmers, which is also going a long way in their being able to get good pricing for their pyrethrum. I'm finalizing now, I can see you're moving. So we are working very hard on this value chain, and in addition to that, as a county, we are bringing or mobilizing the farmers together so we can form cooperatives for better bargaining power, and as well as pyrethrum growers associations and that sort of stuff. So that is where we are. I wouldn't take much longer than that, but I'm glad our numbers are going up, and I promise you, Your Excellency, that we are going to really run with this and get us back to where we used to be. Thank you.
Governor Wanga. Would you like to come in front, please?
One more there. You can use whatever. Hello, Gladys.
Thank you, Excellency. Let me thank you for leading all of us to leave NATO, which is not the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, but no action, talk only. And so we are very happy that we've now moved with the KIPES. And when this came up in Naivasha, Your Excellency, we said this is what we've been doing. You met us where we were going in terms of getting our industrial parks together. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Now, speaking about cotton and the cotton value chain, I think what we need, as you said correctly, is the correct seeds. In Homa Bay, for example, we've now, using the NARIG money under the World Bank, mobilized farmers in their cooperatives and supported them. But now, we've now registered over 12,000 farmers with about 15,000 acres of land. If you calculate how much seeds we need about 22,500 kilos of and we had already talked to our farmers about BT cotton. But now it's become very difficult to access the seed. I'm glad that the ministry next week will be coming to Homa Bay with 3,500 kilos of seed. So you can see the gap is still very large. And if you look at the yield, if we had BT cotton, 22,500 tons, we'd be able to produce at least 22,500 tons of cotton at the end of the day, and be able to support Rivertex, which only needs 56,000 tons for the year. So the seed question is big. And what we said, Your Excellency, when we met with the minister was, the national government doesn't have to give it all. If we can acquire it, and we have a G2G, so that counties we can also put in, because this is our lifeline as well, so that counties we can also put in money to buy the seeds. But we need to know where to buy the seeds, because you know, if seeds don't grow, it's an impeachment question. Sas can tell you, you know. Isn't it, Sas? You can be impeached if you give seeds that don't grow. So that's a very important question there. So if we can get it from government, we'll know it will be certified seeds that if we give will grow. And of course now following that will be the issue of pesticides and just farmer education going forward. And then there's the issue of ginning. And I think the private sector brought it out. When Homa Bay farmers grow seeds, they are ginned in Salawa, in Baringo. So now, you know, seeing is believing. We know we are faith people. Faith is, you know, believing in things hoped for, but people want to see. If I know this is my ginnery, I will take it there. So I think the issue of ginnery is big. I want to leave that at that. And then speak briefly about edible oils. Your Excellency, I know you've spoken about Busia and we are working there, but do you know that 80% of Kenya's Lake Victoria is in Homa Bay? The other 4 counties share 20%. So when it comes to palm oil, last week, together with the private sector, we were in Uganda. We saw what they've done in terms of growing palm oil. Your Excellency, I haven't slept since I came from Uganda because I'm thinking, where am I going to get the land to put together farmers? Because you can't get 100,000 acres of land or 50,000 that is out there. So it's to talk to farmers and to owners of land to ask them, how we can come together in cooperatives and grow the palm oil so that we can move. So that is a very, if you saw what happened, if I saw what I saw in Uganda, surely there is no reason at all why the entire Lake Basin cannot be growing the palm oil. And same to sunflowers and so on, Your Excellency. And finally, energy must be part of this discussion. The energy ministry must be part of the conversation. Because every investor, now we have industrial parks, every investor is asking, what about power? And there are people, for example, who want to come and invest in solar farms, you know, and so on and so forth. But you know the queue. When I was chair of Finance Committee, there was a big queue of people looking for PPAs, over 200-300 people. So how do we deal with the issue of power? Thank you, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, you can see why I started with the ladies. My Vice Chair, Governor Wajir, and then we'll go to Governor Sicily. Mudhomi and then Sicily, and then Governor Bungoma.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellency, the President, and all protocols observed. Your Excellency, I think the eloquence with which you share your frustration might be what convinces everybody to accept everything you're saying. I was so convinced about this housing thing, I wish the parliamentarians were also here. Your Excellency, I think we also share the same frustration because we've been saying the same thing. My name is Ahmed Abdullahi, Governor of Wajir, Vice Chair of Council. We've been saying the same thing in all our counties. I first started getting into the political space, not contesting but supporting someone in 2002. And every time presidential aspirants came to Wajir, they have talked of exporting meat to the Middle East. So I've told my people, we either do that these 5 years, or we don't talk about it ever. So those are some of the things. Now, with respect to leather, I wish I knew that we could make more money from the skins than from the meat. We've just come out of a drought situation, and we've lost, you know, quite some livestock. We could have lost even more had it not been for the interventions of national and county governments. The boreholes and the borehole coverage that we've had has actually helped reduce the amount of livestock we've lost, but we've still lost a lot of livestock. And they die with the meat and with the skins and everything. So this leather business is something that we want to take very, very seriously. In a number of counties up in the north, because we keep being reminded that we have the third largest herd in Africa, a lot of that herd is sitting in south, in arid and semi-arid counties. And I also saw that the gentleman who was presenting, when he was talking about the hides and skins, he didn't include camel hide. Right? And I'm sure that could be quite useful as well. So there's all these abattoirs that were started in these northern counties that are half complete. Some have the structures complete but not equipped. And a lot of them also have factored in some tannery in them. So probably we need to then have a conversation with Moses and his team to see how best to complete this. And we don't mind giving them to the private sector, actually, because government is not very good in running business. We can agree that you come, and I would want to encourage the private sector to come out into these arid counties so that you're not taking your money only to the usual suspects. The risk versus return, probably there's better return if you take bigger risks. Come out to our counties, see what there is. There's a lot of value chains. Everything that has been said here, including cotton, can also happen up in the north. There are pictures I sent to you, Your Excellency, the other night of farms in Wajir we have sensitized people about farming so much that now we don't know how to cope with it. We can't deal with the land management issue because everybody is fencing off land to farm. We don't have sufficient storage. Every other day, my CC sends me pictures of onions and millets, farms. We just don't know even how to deal with it now. We don't have the cold storage in place. So from one end of the continent of producing nothing, we might go to the other end. We might have the glut that Ukambani had a few years back with green grams. So for this leather, and there's a lot more that can be done. We are, sold to this idea, and we're willing to work with those in the private sector to come and invest in this sector. And there's a lot of hides and skins that people just waste. We use it as sleeping mats. Sometimes we throw it on top of our thatched houses as roofing. So if we can show that there's money, definitely it's something that we're willing to sensitize our people on. And we also will endeavor to complete these abattoirs. My sister has spoken about electricity. It's a challenge in the far-flung areas. Your Excellency, this week, 3 times, my people threatened to ban the KPLC gensets, the diesel generator gensets, because we have had electricity rationing in Wajir town, for the last 5 years. For the last 5 years. And the generator sets that came, I think some weeks back, both of them failed because they're old generators. So electricity is a problem. I went to India some time back, about 2 months back, to a place called Ahmedabad. And by local law, every house must have solar panels on its roof. And they generate electricity, which goes back into the grid. So if what you produce in your house is more than what you consume, you actually make money from the grid. And we're wasting all that sun up in the north. So probably we also need to look at how to force Ketraco to take its transmission lines to Mandera, and together force everyone to have solar panels on their rooftops to generate enough electricity and make it cheaper for these producers. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a brilliant idea on energy, Governor Muthoni.
And as you come in, Governor Muthoni, respectfully, I'd like to remind us about time. So if you can just make your remarks short so we can continue the conversation, and hear as well from the private sector who will have questions for you. And I'm sure you also have questions for the private sector to engage you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. You know, politicians, sometimes when they see the microphone, we tend to speak longer, even when it's not necessary. But I'll keep it very short. When I was waking up to speak, and Anne said, Governor Muthoni, Korea asked whether there's any manufacturing in pulses. And Your Excellency, we do not have to have real manufacturing to add value. In this country, we have a lot of counties that are producing pulses that are going to the market and fetching the wrong value just because our farmers are not organized. And me, I'll just talk about 2 things. I'll talk about the power of numbers in between our counties, because now we are going to have 47 mini centers for value addition. And if you're not careful, everybody needs to be stuck with their own small numbers. And that is why we must have a conversation between ourselves in what we can be able to do within our individual counties, coordinating or collaborating with the neighboring counties. I'll give a very good example. I've been having a conversation between Governor Ann, Governor Barire, and the Meru County about what we produce. There is no value in having tannery in Tharaka-Nithi, having another one in Embu, another one in Meru, and that each one of us has small manufacturing with cost. And that is why we've agreed that SES can bring me the hides and the skins. Same with Anno Igoro, because she doesn't have a lot of animals, because she does a lot of rice. And we have now manufacturing that is based on numbers. And lastly, if that makes sense, of course, to most of the counties, it is going to be duplicated all over, so that we can be able to have the value of the numbers in having synergy in one production. Your Excellency, you gave me a call the other day and gave me instructions, which I took very seriously. You're not aware that when you called me about the green grams, our people had gone slow on production because of the same problem that Governor of Kitui is experiencing of the prices. So what we did an emergency and we bought certified seeds. And the production at the moment is so high, not just in Tharaka-Nithi, in Kitui, and even in Embu, because the rains were good. And now there's an outcry, because we already announced to them the government is going to take over through the National Trading Corporation and buy the same. So we need to be also alert and be very timely in what we promise our farmers, like Susan was putting it. Because every time we have our production with the promise to the farmers that we can be able to deliver the market and we don't, then it's a problem during the next production. A farmer has no business producing what they have more than what they can consume if all of it go to waste. But I'm happy I'm speaking to the people who are involved in manufacturing, in value addition, which is Kenya, which is KEPSA, and with the right market. So again, as I finish, kindly, Mr. Skuria, let us see what we can do with the National Trading Corporation. Because right now, those places are no-go zone for us as a government, when people are walking around with half prices of what they were fetching before, because of our production. Thank you very much.
I think we will cede the space now to the private sector so that the conversation goes on the other side, and if there's another round of questions, then the governors who haven't spoken the opportunity to contribute and also respond to the private sector questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. As we begin this conversation, what we did, Your Excellency, we didn't invite all the sectors. So the associations that you see here today and some of the private sector leaders are the ones around this conversation. So there are many others. So you'll see ASNET here, you'll see Chamber here, you'll see professionals here, you'll see SME here, you see KM here, but there are many others who are not here. But let me recognize the chair of KEPSA, who is here with us. And the other chairs who are also in a part of this conversation, and the companies. But as we begin this conversation, I think the opportunities are very clear. The challenge we've had is on the competitiveness. Your Excellency, remember when we were doing the ease of doing business, we did so well, from 189 in 2014 to 56 by 2020. You know, and we worked very closely. I think you're the one even who launched that conversation with World Bank and ourselves in 2014. But the challenge that has remained is on competitiveness. If you look at our imports, they've continued to increase while our exports remain constant. And that's what we need to change with these value chains. And the areas that I think are a problem for us on competitiveness are cost of raw materials. And so it's music to my ears when I hear Her Excellency Gladys Wanga talk about what to do with edible oils. Kalangala Island in Uganda is a must visit for anyone who is thinking of what we can really do with palm oils in this country. Then logistics is the other area that I think we have dropped. Productivity and finance. Utilities has been mentioned, energy has been mentioned, but I think something else that we forget is water. We've had great rains, but I think a lot of it is ending in the Indian Ocean. And in a couple of months, we will not have it again. And the water will become a challenge. So those are some of the areas that are really affecting us. So as I ask for interventions, let me ask the chair of KM, Rajan Shah, to actually make the first intervention in 2 minutes.
And we came out looking very optimistic. When I heard you speak today, I could still feel the same energy, Your Excellency. However, as a manufacturing sector, if we fast forward from that time to now, 8 months, there is pessimism. There is pessimism, yet there is hope. There's also hope for the future. So I just want to kind of highlight, as Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and I will, Your Excellency, also touch on housing levy, housing fund. I can assure you as CAM, we are not against it, but let me leave that to the last. So Your Excellency, when you get challenged us with that, and that 20 by 30, we went and sat as a board and looked at what are the main 4 pillars which is going to drive this. And the 4 pillars we came out with was global competitiveness, export-led growth, agriculture for industry, and SME development. And I'm going to touch on probably 3 of them today in a way. Early this week, I also had the opportunity to listen to you at the Africa Continental Free Trade, the summit, the Africa Investment Summit. And I saw the passion with which you talked about Africa Continental Free Trade and how we need to open up Africa, how we need to open up to a trade within Africa, which is right now at about 15%, and we need to go much higher like what many other trading blocs are going. However, Your Excellency, to do that, we need to be globally competitive. We no longer can talk about just our local competitiveness. And we have been doing a lot of soul searching at CAM to see where this global competitiveness is going to come from. I'm going to raise 2 particular areas of concern. Today is not a day that we are complaining, but why we feel that global competitiveness is eroding for manufacturers in Kenya. And I'll give a couple of examples. And I'll relate to our current finance bill. We have introduced a levy, the Export and Investment Promotion Levy. We fully understand the rationale behind why the levy has been put in. Yet, we feel that this is a kind of a tariff which is going to hurt manufacturing. And let me just kind of quickly give you the genesis of how industrialization in Kenya has happened. When industrialization started post-independence, we could only get into conversion industries. Industries downstream where we are converting certain intermediate products into finished products. And over the last 3 to 4 decades, we have gotten strong in that sector of the industry. Now the time has come for us to backward integrate into doing primary production so that the primary producers can also supply to these converters. And for sure, as CAM, we support that whole value addition process. However, we need to still keep whatever we have grown in the last 3-4 decades, because these industries in the conversion have also become competitive and are also exporting. And if we increase their raw material cost, which is their raw material cost, it's going to become uncompetitive for them and it will erode their competitiveness. Yet, at the same time, we can find ways how we can ensure that the primary producers who are making huge investments can still be supported to become competitive so that they are also, and I'll give you examples of the steel, cement industry. We're talking about the clinker, the industry that we were together, Your Excellency, when we opened the plant of Devki in Samburu, making billets, one of the first of the kind. And we have to be highly applaud investors who are coming with those huge investments. However, how do we work with them and have more targeted interventions to be able to make them globally competitive so that they can not only have to just sell in Kenya, but they can sell in the whole of rest of Africa. And towards that end, we are happy to work together to be able to support that, rather than to bring in levies which is going to hurt the entire industry and will also erode our global competitiveness. So, Your Excellency, that was one area. The second one, which is not connected to the finance bill, is our other big factor of production, which is wages. We understand the how we need to create employment. We need to, definitely we have a big job. We are talking about 5 million youth that need to be employed. And to do that, we need to think a little bit differently. We need to look at our labor laws. We need to change with times, Your Excellency. The world is changing where now there are mothers who want to work from home. There are also mothers who only want to work part-time. And yet our laws are inflexible and do not allow those kind of working methodologies. And more importantly, Your Excellency, we need to bring productivity-based pay. By doing productivity-based pay, we are going to probably put more money in the pockets of our employees than how we are doing right now. We are also going to become more globally competitive through productivity-based. And as the private sector, we are willing to work with the government to find solutions around that. I want to touch on one more thing. I'm sorry I'm taking a bit of time. Kenya Association of Manufacturers has also on the pillar of agriculture for industry. I was so glad to hear today the governors talking here about how they want to kind of add in this whole value chain. We just started this initiative last month. And Your Excellency, what we are doing, 1/3 of our membership is made up of the food and beverage sector. Their raw material is the food crops which are being produced in each of these counties. We are calling them sector by sector. There are 34 value chains we are looking at. And we are looking at their demand and how they need their demand, what varieties of the raw material they need, what price they can pay, and what consistency of supply. And now we want to work backwards. And I already spoke with Governor Waiguru that we want to work with all the counties and see how we can link together. We are also working with banks to see how we can organize our producers to be able to kind of finance the production. So I'm very excited. In fact, I personally am in the value chain of pulses as well, all grains. I was sad to hear from 2 of our governors, they cannot sell their pulses. And yet, the problem I have as a manufacturer, I can't get enough of it. And I paid the highest price last year, and still I could not get enough. So, Your Excellency, there is a disconnect. And as private sector, we need to see how to connect the dots here. Lastly, Your Excellency, around the housing levy, I can assure you that as CAM, we are not against the whole concept. In fact, the whole concept of saving is something, the culture of saving is something very important. This is what Singapore did at a saving culture of 45%. That is how they grew their economy. And I think the saving culture is extremely important. Where, Your Excellency, and I will honestly be candid, where private sector, when they interrogated this, we felt that there were questions being asked. We have seen in the past various other projects which have sometimes gone to waste or issues of governance of the funds. And these were questions being asked by our private sector. We also want to, our own members are hurting right now in business. So they are saying, can we afford it right now or can we go progressively? So Your Excellency, I can assure you, we are not against, we can sit, we can talk, and we can find solutions, and we can progressively build this so that we can also prove the concept and at the same time work together, because no one can be a better beneficiary than the manufacturing sector through all the construction material. Thank you, sir, and let's keep on engaging.
Thank you very much. Allow me to call the CEO of Kenya Chamber of Commerce, Patrick Nyongesa. You've heard what the counties are doing, and I think your intervention will be on the competitiveness with the counties, and you have county chambers.
Thank you so much, Carol, the CEO of KEPSA. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, and also my patron for Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and all the dignitaries and fellow private sector team. Good evening. I want to be very practical in my discussion. this afternoon. Your Excellency, we must really appreciate you for moving us from the NGO. I'm not talking of non-governmental organization, but I'm talking of nothing going on to something going on. It is true, I've been listening from the remarks of His Excellency, the remarks of the governors and industry players. We need to be where we want to be as Kenyans. So, Your Excellency, I would talk about how do we be where we want to be. For us to be very competitive, we must think of supporting SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. Small and medium enterprises, Your Excellency, I know your government has put a lot of policy measures, especially supporting the youth and women, but this is not enough until private sectors come in. How comes that our product cannot meet the desired specifications of the global and regional markets? One, we must work with the SMEs on product development for exports. We must come up with policies that, Your Excellency, would ensure that value addition is very critical. Just like China, you don't export or you don't sell your products in raw form. Your Excellency, if we can join you in your appetite, especially when you started, I was part of the team who witnessed the launch of the value-add tea to Ghana. And I saw Ghana last week, they were here. If we can have that policy that if you grow your products, then you don't sell it raw form, you must do value-add. Today we are talking of this integration of these value chains. If we don't focus on value addition, we'll be wasting a lot of airtime here, and even wasting the time for His Excellency, the President. You would have used this opportunity to do better things. Another thing is research. Your Excellency, we cannot remain competitive if we don't invest in research. And this is not a preserve function for the national government only or county government. Private sector, we must come hand in hand. When we talk of quality seeds, for example, on these value chains, we are talking about textile, cotton, leather, and even pyrethrum. Why must we import seeds? Kenyans are educated. Let's spend in research and produce our own seeds. My governor Wanga has just talked about you will be impeached if you don't give quality seeds. Let's have every county to have a research center to provide certified seeds. Government can come with that policy. Another thing, Your Excellency, you know, extension services died in this country at the county. Our farmers are at the mercy of the traditional practices. We must go back to the drawing board and invest in extension services across the counties. Let our extension services support the small-scale farmers so that the small-scale farmers would be able to enhance on productivity. And to enhance on productivity, we must also really work together, both private sector and government, to really support and protect the local farmers. So that the middlemen in this country, Your Excellency, in absentia, and I'm happy that my minister is here, small-scale farmers never get the desired profit from their produce because of the middlemen. My CS, this is something which we must work together to ensure that we really improve and support small-scale farmers. Another thing which we must improve on is contract farming. Contract farming is very, very key.
We have a
1 minute more.
Okay.
Your bigger brother, Ken CCI, because the other person also had more minutes. Just give me 2 minutes. We must see on how to work on market access and diversification. As Chamber of Commerce, governors who are here, we want to work closely with you so that we support the SMEs to diversify, especially when it comes to production. A lot of discussion have been put forward especially on, to address on post-harvest losses. And our cold storage facilities needs to really be, we need to invest in cold storage facilities in every county. I would tell you the value chains we are talking about, if we don't address post-harvest losses, then we will not make the desired outcome to create jobs and also put money at the hands of the farmers. Lastly, Your Excellencies and the dignitaries who are present, we need to really enhance and promote intra- and inter-county trade. Why must you import products which other county, who is just your neighbor, is able to produce? This is something which would enhance productivity, it would enhance innovativeness, it would enhance creativity, and lastly, let's make farming to be youth-driven. We must change the attitude of our youths and the women so that they see agriculture as a commercial entity. I want to thank you and offer my unconditional support to work with you to champion all these value chains in all the counties. Thank you so much.
Thank you. In the interest of time, as we had said earlier, we want to have a conversation. This is a discussion between the private sector and government at national level and at county level. And we, of course, are very grateful that we have the governors here. We have the president who's talked about the big picture, and he's here also to respond to some questions. I think, Caro, can you talk about the specific value chains? We have heard of the investment in the pyrethrum sector, of cotton, in the cotton industry, of the leather industry as well. Players who are in this sector and who have issues that they'd like to ask of the president or the governors that it need to be addressed so that, like the president said, it's not about talk anymore, it's about getting things done. What is it that the private sector needs to see or to leave out of this room with today that they can actualize this vision going forward?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me call Just Betty on cotton and textiles. Please, a minute and a half, just the asks on this sector, especially because you're saying that our issues are competitiveness, is not the opportunities.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, thank you for this audience. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I think the message that was coming out loud and clear from all the presentations so far was global competitiveness. And if we are not globally competitive, we will not be able to export, we will not be able to grow our industry. And in one word, I think what they were all saying is either we are world class or we are no class. Hakuna kitu ya katikati. So we have to be world class. And that involves our logistics, involves our transport, involves utilities, it involves finance, all sorts of drivers of competitiveness. Your Excellency, you also mentioned that the textile value chain generated $544 million of export to the US last year, and of which 70% of it went to China primarily. So we imported our raw materials from China. So out of $544 million, $300 million we actually sent back. That is not what we want to do. We want to keep all 544 million. And I remember 8 months ago when we were in this room, we talked about that is 0.5% of US imports. How can we change that? How can we make it 2% of US imports? How can it make it 5% of US imports? And I think at that point we did commit to you, by 2025 we can give you 2% of US imports, which is $2 billion, and 5% by 2030, which is $5 billion. The direct jobs in that sector would be 200,000 jobs by 25 and 500,000 jobs by 2030. So yes, the textile value chain that you've picked is definitely a low-hanging fruit. It's definitely easily attainable because we are all making world-class product already, and it's a labor-intensive industry, and what we're looking for is jobs. And with that backward integration from the field to the fashion, which is what we are talking about today, from the cotton fields, that all the governors will help us grow to fire up our mills so we can retain that entire value. Right now, Kenya is sitting at a very pretty place, and a very pretty place meaning the global geopolitics that is driving business between the US and China, and it's an open secret. I think if we play our cards right, we could actually be alternative supply chain out of China to the US, but made in Kenya. So we also did mention that there was, and I did talk about a small story last time, about one company that actually transformed Bangladesh to $42 billion. I'm happy to report today, sir, on Tuesday that company will be coming here to meet you for 2 days to see if they can replicate what they did in Chittagong, and so that we can create those jobs in Naivasha. I was trying to brief my governor earlier on. They will be here in Naivasha, and the governor and myself will host them before we bring them to you, and hope that we can transform Kenya to the way you want us to do. Asanteni sana. God bless.
Thank you, Jaz.
Thank you very much. Automotive, Moses Nderito, maybe you can just say, where do you need intervention for us to get to the electric cars, to the electric motorcycles in a minute or two? And as you come, I'll have 2 more quickly, and then I'll turn it over back to the governors. I'll have leather, PVS Rao, and I'll also have housing. And first we'll stop from there before we move to the rest.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Your Excellency. I am here representing electric mobility. And yesterday we were very excited when we heard your speech at the 60th Madaraka Day. What are we looking for? We are looking for what KAM said. In 2008, President Kibaki gave an enabling environment for two-wheelers. So electric mobility is divided into 4. Two-wheelers, bicycles, 2- and 3-wheelers, motorcycles and tuk-tuks, 4-wheelers, which includes vehicles, buses, and commercial vehicles, and charging infrastructure. A little incentive from the government for us to manufacture here locally. There's already 35 companies that are actually in startup phase, have invested over $50 million, and we are looking to push that to be able to actually increase that and actually manufacture here locally, using the value chains already been created. But on top of that, we will be able to support all the other value chains we've had. Those extension officers can use electric bicycles and electric motorcycles. We can do last mile delivery of all those, of the pharmaceuticals, the leather, even in the housing, we can use electric motorcycles, we can use electric vehicles, and even be able to use electric buses to deliver those people to the actual places of work. So for us, we're just looking for a small incentive on the manufacturing side and on the lithium-ion batteries. Currently, lithium-ion batteries attract duty if they're for transport. But if they're for solar, they actually have no duty. If we then were able to have a level playing field, exactly what solar had, exactly what Boda Boda had 8 years ago, I can tell you we will give you an excellent area for investment and also employing a lot of people. And this is an area that is predominantly youth. I am the oldest person in that industry. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much, Moses. Straight to the point, what you need. Thank you. Let's have Rao, Leather. I know Leather has been spoken a lot. The Vice Chair of COG is right here, talked a lot about it. What do you really need to move it to the next level?
Your Excellency, all protocols observed. My name is Rao. I am representing the leather sector, which is one of the pillars. I think, you know, by His Excellency, is preaching about leather since 2018. And we are very fortunate because the beauty about leather, which no other sector has got in Kenya, is we have raw materials, huge raw material base. We have excellent manpower, and we have a beautiful market among East African countries and Africa and export. Your Excellency, just give you points. You always told us how to think big. We started thinking big in the leather sector. And we have made a lot of, forward, movements since you have taken over. And dear audience, in the last 41 years of my life in leather sector in Kenya, I have never attended 7 meetings related to the leather under one president in 6 months. This is the first time in the history. So we thank you for that. You always say, what do you want from me and what you can give, what we give as a private sector. I have only 2 things, Your Excellency, that our raw material quality until 2016 was excellent because the slaughterhouses, there was a proper management and it was under national government. Since the devolution has happened, we had a challenge on the slaughterhouses management of flaying and so on, so on, so. I'm very fortunate that we have, on the invitation of His Excellency, the Governor of Shambur, I visited They have built a modern, slaughterhouse. We want to be competitive in the world market, and domestically, we need to revive our slaughterhouses. With the training of players, and we need good quality raw material, so we don't reduce our duty and export our raw material for food instead of using for industry. Number two, we are very happy to inform you, Your Excellency, that the private sector, the tanneries, the small and medium scale, and also large investors are investing on footwear and leather goods. After talking to all our sector members in the last 6 months, they are already in the planning of 500 million shillings has been pledged. They are already ordered the machinery, and we are going on. Now, coming to the last one, which is, I think, your vision, which is one of the best, is to prepare school shoes at the county levels for our children. We want to give a school shoe for every child in this country. We don't want them to wear a plastic. We don't want to walk bare feet. So each county, please, I would like the first 7 counties, please come, talk to us. We have a technology, like our Excellency says, making shoe is not a rocket science. So it is very easy. We are here to work, and we want, Your Excellency, give us 7 counties. We produce 1,000 pairs every day, creating an employment of 5,000 to start with in the next 6 months. And also, one more thing which is very, very important for many of you who may not be aware, we have been positioned in a beautiful position-wise because God has given us that opportunity at present. Ethiopia had 15 tanneries. Today, there were only 4 operating. Sudan is completely gone because of these situations. All our neighboring countries in East Africa, there are no tanneries except the world-class tanneries we have in Kenya. So we have an opportunity to take all these materials to convert into a product value addition, creating employment of 100,000, which is not difficult. To do this, Your Excellency, the last thing I want to request your government, that we need to train artisans, we need to train people on footwear and leather goods designing and training program. Now, we can export our labor force not only for us, to the whole of Africa. That will be a very big, another 100,000. Trust me, Your Excellency, please help us out in good training program, which we are talking for many, many years. Your hard decisions, your firm decisions will help us out. Finally, our governor here, brother, in 2017 and 18, we used to buy camel hides, 100 tons every month. We used to tan and export to one of the best brands in the world called Eco Shoe from Switzerland. And so if you give me a good hide, well flayed, and we can buy all your camel. Number 2, we are buying every day. Our leather sector is buying 10,000 skins in Kamaiko, in and around Nairobi, skins, and all the skins are coming from northern region. So there is no problem with this, with the material, raw material, and the skins. The problem is accessibility. So we are ready to work with. We want to make it sure that we are going to produce at least, in my opinion, more than 20 million pairs of shoes in the next 5 years. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. If you know eco shoes, they are some of the most expensive shoes around the world. So if they can be produced here, you can imagine what our revenue will be. But as we said, the global challenges have opened opportunities for us. It's for us to grab them. Let me ask Winnie Ngumi, housing. And just very quickly, any intervention that you need from government. You've had the president and his passion on housing.
Thank you, Your Excellency. My name is Winnie Ngumi, Managing Director, Space and Style. I'm also the chair of Building and Construction Sector at Kenya Association of Manufacturers. I sit on the Industry Sector Board at KEPSA, and I also happen to wear a public sector hat as the chair of the Kenya National Highways Authority. So I do have a view across public and private. And in terms of construction, Your Excellency, all we need is the enforcement of the local content policy, because sitting on both sides, I know how challenging it is to enforce the local content policy. We do have factories, Your Excellency, on the ground. I do have a factory that manufactures roofing tiles, and my consumption is actually 30%. If we are able to enact the local, to enforce the local content policy, we'll be able to move instantly our job creation across our industries instantly. And that includes ceramics. We have ceramics, our cement, our glass, our doors, our painting manufacturers, piping manufacturers, just by the enforcement of the local content policy. We did work with the previous, I think, in the last 2 years, and we created the procurement master roll. It is not being it was gazetted, but it's not enforceable because we are not able to have laws under the PPADA that can enforce this. So, Your Excellency, all we need is the right specifications from the ministry, and we have engaged PS Hinga, and we have open doors there to ensure that as long as we are able to manufacture on the ground, that our local materials are the ones that will be consumed first. And I say this because my company started importation for 15 years and went into production 5 years ago, and today 90% of the products we manufacture are sold locally, and only 5% we import. So it is possible to do that. And also the last thing is that we do run a lot of programs for training of fundis. We just want to work with the Ministry of Education to ensure that these programs are recognized so that the fundis that we have trained, and my company has trained over 5,000, that these are accredited and that these fundis can be consumed by the National Construction Authority, so that then as they are forming their cooperatives, that they are able to get funding from sectors like UN Habitat that has money for fundis, so that they can now run companies or small little businesses that will be able to build into the value chain. And I would be failing my profession as an architect to say this, Your Excellency, that we look forward to our contribution as professions in the built environment as an architect to contributing directly into bringing sanity into the construction sector. We are working on an act that's going to put together a lot of structure to our sector, so that then we can ensure from an architectural point of view, we are designing the right products that are consuming made in Kenya products, and that ultimately we will see the houses that you want desired. Your Excellency, as a sector, we are very excited to have 9 billion shillings poured into our sector. We are ready to run. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because of interest of time, we've really talked about edible oils and pyrethrums, so I may not call them right now, but let me finish with pharmaceuticals, and I'll just call Dr. Vimal Patel just to very quickly say, what are the needs? You've heard about saline water. What do you need to be able to do that in Kirinyaga, at the coast, and everywhere else?
Thank you, Carol, Your Excellency, and all protocols observed. So I'm coming not in numbers as employees. I'm looking at the security of Kenya. Where I talk about security, I'm talking about when we had COVID. During COVID time, there was a drug called azithromycin, which was the first choice thing. Luckily, we had the raw materials. We supplied Kenya. And we supplied in a short time, which then tells you a story. It tells you that manufacturing here is better than importing. The second story I'm going to tell you, that if we want to grow, I know you're passionate about pharmaceuticals. I've seen everywhere you mentioned it. If you want to grow, and we want to be an India of Africa, we need to change certain tax policies. In that, what I mean is that today, medicine is exempt. Everybody thinks exempt means zero VAT, but it doesn't. It means that for me, if I put up a factory, I put up anything to do with services, electricity, I'm paying VAT, and I cannot claim back. An importer does not have that kind of claim back. So I think we need to change the policy. The second thing we need to do is that Kenya is the hub of East Africa. But what is saddening, because our policies don't support us manufacturers, people like Uganda, the number of factories are coming higher. I think we should not waste this opportunity. And I can tell you, once we do this, you will see API plant coming up in Africa. I know you're passionate about that as well, but it won't come without these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me hand it over next to Eric.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, you've heard from the private sector and what the private sector has said this afternoon. Well, there's been a bit of talking about what the private sector would like to see, what the private sector would want to get from government, from the national government and from the county governments. And Excellencies, governors, you've also heard this, but also you've heard the private sector speaking enthusiastically about the entire program and saying that they are on board and committed to the value chain approach and how the value chains then can support the economy to grow. Now, I'd like to give the opportunity to you, Governor Waiguru. You've heard what the private sector are saying, you know, in terms of they just need to engage with governors. To see where the opportunities are per county, like you've said, it's per county, engaging with the governors per county, and responding to some of the needs that they've raised here. How would you make sure that what you've had today is actualized in terms of moving forward a conversation into action?
I think as I respond to this, I just want to warn my colleague that I will give him an opportunity to just add to what it is that I'm going to say, Governor Lusaka. On the issue of what it is that the counties need to do, I've had a few statements that have been made. Some, I think one of them was a bit blanket on there's no extension services in the counties. I think what we may need to do is maybe enhance the visibility of our extension services to ensure that we're providing the quality that the private sector is looking for. And I think for us to be able to provide the quality of, let's say, the produce, we need to engage with the private sector for them to articulate and be very clear on what it is they're looking for. We've heard today on leather, what is the situation? They said the quality of the hides is a problem because of the slaughterhouses. So if that is the problem, then maybe Governor of Wajir and other governors who have slaughterhouses will sit with the sector that produces or processes leather and come up with an agreement that confirms what is it that is expected standards, and then an assurance of market if they meet that standard. And then we have a working relationship, and that can work across the sectors. Now, let me ask Governor Bungoma to please come and also respond to a few issues.
Mine will be brief. First, as Chair of Agriculture, and secondly, as a Governor Bungoma, and thirdly, in my other world, I was a PS in livestock development. I want to agree with what the Governor Wajir said, because when we were PS, we had a very clear plan on what we wanted to do. You realize that in Isiolo, we put an international abattoir and an airport. Isiolo the same, Garissa the same, and the idea was to export whatever was being produced there to other countries. So I think we need to follow up and know whether that is still on course so that those airports can work and they continue producing so that we are able to implement what you are saying. And getting things done, Your Excellency, all counties are very excited. We are very excited about the housing, the affordable housing. We have found land and we are ready. We're just waiting for you to come and launch. I want to wind up by quoting what our late Minister Michuki said, getting things done. He asked one of our colleagues when I was at PS what it needed to clean Nairobi River. And my colleague said we need a concept paper, we need all those write-ups. He actually chased him from the ministry and he said you are not the right person that I need in this ministry. To clean Nairobi River, you need wheelbarrows, you need gumboots, you need people to clean the river. So we need to get things done. Another example, as I wind up, Your Excellency, we were in a meeting and there was a problem in Mau. And he said, remember the late, why are we sitting here discussing things instead of getting them done? You know where Mau is, you know you have police, and you know where you want to take these people. Go and work, because the moment you continue engaging in discussions, you politicize it, and we can't move. So, Your Excellency, I want to support what you have said, that we now need to move. Next time we meet, we should be talking about what we have achieved and not discussing about, again, challenges and what we are facing. That's the only way that we are going to move forward. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Governor Lusaka. I think we'll wind up with Governor Sess. 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And let me, I want to be a bit general, not specific. You've heard the governors, and I don't want to repeat what has been said. We are in the same WhatsApp group with His Excellency in terms of impatience. Why are we impatient? Because the 6 million jobless young people come from our counties. We meet them every single day. So we need action and no more boardroom meetings. And so I just want to add my voice and say that really it's time for action. I've listened to Ms. Gumi, that's your name, and she says the only assurance we need, Your Excellency, is that 40% local content will be available for local manufacturers. So if that's the only issue, are we therefore saying, as the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, that we are willing and ready to support this great idea of housing? Or are we going to spend another 10 years discussing about the same housing issue that was started in 2013 when Jubilee government took over? I think those are the basic questions. Let's hear a yes, then we go and start work. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Sess. And finally, Governor Badilisha, and just 30 seconds for you. I have stolen some time.
Yes, you have.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We want to appreciate that you called this forum for us to interact with the private sector. When I was listening, the private sector have really talked about the local and global competitiveness, and I have solutions for them. Maybe they set up their industries and factories maybe very far away from where the products are coming. We would encourage them, instead of importing those things from counties to Nairobi here, come and set up those factories where we are, and it will be easier for you. Again, Your Excellency, I would also like to suggest that the issue of power, like in Nyandarua we have wind power, which can be very cheap. So we would want to encourage some of the private sectors also to invest in production of power, so that now it becomes easy even for you to carry that work. Rao, we are #1 reading in milk production, meaning we have a lot of animals. So you're asking of a county to support in shoe making. We are ready for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just to conclude in a sentence, Your Excellency, to the private sector, we are going to be building the CAPs from starting in another 2 weeks. They should be ready in another 6 months to 7 months. In the meantime, our counties are available to engage on matters production, whether it's in providing extension services so that we can produce the produce that you want, and also to discuss with you which areas you may want to come and invest in every county. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, you've said what you'd like to get from the government. How you'd like to engage with the government. The governors have said how they'd like to engage with you. The president started by saying, well, we've been talking about this for many years, and now it's about time that we get things done. Your Excellency, I want to conclude by just coming to you so that you can set this ball rolling. In fact, not just set the ball rolling, but just kick the ball, so that everybody knows what they're supposed to do beyond this day. Talk has been done, Budgetary allocations have already been made. I've seen the budget at the national level. You've allocated budget for KIPES. You've allocated budget for the value chains. The county governors have said the same. The private sector, you're saying you're ready to engage. So enough with the talk, Mr. President. Where should the action begin with the private sector today?
Allow me to respond generally in, I know my good friends governors have made comments which are very positive, and I have one or two things to say about what they have said. I have listened to our good friends also in the private sector and what they want us to do and how they view this journey that we intend to take together. Let me just say one broad thing. Today, we had a meeting with our children, and I was reflecting on how much money we spend in our education. For primary, secondary, TVET, and university, every year we spend 650 billion, every year. That is 28% thereabout of our budget. And it is important for us to understand that because we are spending that amount of money, we have developed one of the best human capital in the world. We pride ourselves of having one of the best human capital in the world. We churn out about between 800 and 1 million young people into the labor market every year after we spend this huge amount of money. It should concern us as a nation what happens to this big investment we make in the education and the development of our human capital. Otherwise, we would be very reckless. And it is the reason why I want to encourage all of us here, especially my good friends in the private sector, that it is important for us collectively to think about how we are going to create opportunities for the 800,000, 1 million young people will churn out every year from our education system because we spend a colossal amount of money to develop these people. Having said that, listening to my good sister, Susan, I agree with you 100% that that whole system about what we need to do, and I am very excited, I'm very happy with what the counties are doing. The counties you have mentioned, we're going to, whatever it is, that's why we have a line in our budget to support pyrethrum. We are working, we are putting some resources in cooperative development, we are putting some resources in matter seeds, and we are willing and ready to partner with you so that we can turn around the pyrethrum sector and create opportunities for farmers and for us as a country to leverage on it to get foreign exchange and to export our products. I am looking forward to, once we finish with the budget, to a proper engagement between our ministries, both trade, agriculture, with our county governments, so that you can tell us where the gaps are, and so that we can see what resources do you have, how can we backstop, how can we fill the gaps, so that we can all move together. Same thing with cotton. Same thing, and I listened to the very, very passionate drive by my sister Wanga about cotton and about palm oil. These are the two sectors that we have deliberately put in our plan because they hold a very huge potential of not just incomes for farmers, but also creating opportunities for jobs for our young people, so that the 650 billion we spend every year on our young people have some meaning. And to promise you that we've also aligned in that sector, and hopefully we will get the private sector to come on board so that we can work on the aspects you have said about ginning, because it's not practical and it's not correct that cotton produced in Homa Bay is ginned in Baringo. It doesn't simply make sense. You know, we have to rethink about that, and that is part of the resources that we have factored into our budget to see how we can assist the private sector with seed capital to provide some of these interventions. And also, the reason why I sent Moses Kuria to Indonesia is precisely because of palm oil, because we want to be clear. The president of Indonesia had sent his minister to see me, and then I sent Moses, and now the president himself is coming, because we have to unlock the jigsaw around edible oil. I know I had a meeting with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and they were telling me about that, you know, we have some people who have invested in packaging and doing a bit of refining at the tail end. I think we need to do more than that. It is not sufficient for us to import finished goods from all over the place, package it, put a brand, and imagine that it's a Kenyan brand. It's not. I mean, let's be honest. We are lying to ourselves, you know. We have to get it right from the beginning. And I know it's easier to live in the comfort zone because you're making a little money and it's okay, you know, but you know, it's not okay. You know, we are spending $1 billion every year to import edible oil that our farmers can grow, and they can make that $1 billion. I am very happy that we are all thinking in the same direction, at least with the governors. We are thinking in the same direction, and I hope we will create a big enough team to be able to persuade our private sector to come along with us. Please, tafadhali. Yeah, so that we can all think together in that direction. We are working with what we can do, the whole of Western Kenya, from Kitale, Bungoma, all the way Siaya, Kisumu, Homa Bay, Migori, Vihiga, Kakamega. Those are the people who should be producing for us edible oil because they have the capacity to. And we have the market for them. They don't have to go looking. We have the market to buy, because we are already spending $1 billion. That $1 billion is money that is available in our market that we can use to buy your products. But you see, we have to get on with it. It cannot continue to be any discussion any further. We all know what is right and what is wrong. Mudhomi Njuki, I agree with you, the pulses issue. I called you. I called the governor of Kitui. I called Seth. I called, who was the other person? I think those three. And I gave this man called Moses Kuria instructions. Moses, I told you what to do. You know, chukua microphone, ambia hawa watu, hii pulses, what are you going to do? Wapi microphone, patia huyu mtu anaitwa Moses. You know me and you are discussed.
Your Excellency, as if you expect to have a different answer, which is not possible. So, Governor Mudhomi Njuki, by close of next week, we'll have bought all the dengos from your county, from Makueni, and from Kitui, and from Embu at the right price. So we need to have a conversation around that price. And why I'm very happy, this is a very good problem to have. Because a few weeks ago, we came to you because we didn't have food in this country. And you told us, just guarantee me that you'll buy, these people are human tractors. And you have proven that they are real human tractors. So by course of next week, I'm going to dispatch my teams, and once we agree on the price, we'll mop up all the dengus. And that should be the trend for future, for the cotton, for the pyrethrum, for anything. It is not our fault. It is not the farmers' mistake that they are too hardworking. We have to do what we need to do as a government. Thank you. Asante.
Okay. So when we finish this meeting, I expect a meeting between Governor Mudomi, Governor Ses, Governor, my good friend Mutula, and Malombe, Governor Malombe, on the issue of pulses. It is going to be tragic if our farmers are going to get stranded with a crop and a product when we've just walked out from a food insecurity situation. It is not prudent, it's not intelligent. In fact, let me not say it's foolish, because it is. So let us let us sort that out. I already I spoke to the managing director of KNTC, and I told her what to do. Moses, you need to just get things moving, because we cannot continue that way, and we need to begin to demonstrate the power of aggregation. And we have all agencies which can buy the pulses. We have our NYS, we have our military, we have many people who are ready to buy that product. Let me also say, I have listened to the private sector very carefully, and they have told us about global competitiveness, which is good. They have told us about all the other good things that we need to do. But we need to be a bit more clear on what do we need to do as government. Because you have mentioned, my good brother from Kenya Association of Manufacturers, you have said the problem is the export levy. The export levy is not there now. We are proposing. You know, we are proposing. So why is it a problem before even we put it in place? And the reason why, you know, let's be honest, the reason why we are putting the export levy is because of what Madam Ngumi here said. Is she still here? Yes, she's there. She says she's been importing and trying this or the other. She's now moved in the last 5 years to manufacturing from locally, local primary products. That is the transition we need to make. It is the transition we need to make in cement. It is the transition we need to make in steel, the billets. It is the transition we need to make in paper. And that is why we are saying, and that is why we are putting this levy, is so that those people who have taken the step, like Ms. Ngumi here, those people who have taken the step to produce locally, we support them by imposing a duty on those who want to continue importing raw materials and packaging things here. You know, let us just be, let's be honest. Ama tunaelewana namna gani? Yeah. How are we going to create these jobs? How are we going to create additional jobs in our manufacturing sector? How are we going to stop the hemorrhage of foreign exchange if we are importing what we can produce locally? That is the story, Kenyans, please. So, tafadhali bwana mkubwa, sasa tumeweka tax kwa simiti kwa sababu We have enough cement factories here, which should be employing Kenyans. And we should stop, going to bring cement from, I don't know where, when we can use our own local materials, make the cement, hire our own people, stop the hemorrhage of foreign exchange. I was having a conversation with Anne. We are importing saline water. Just imagine. We're importing saline water from all manner of places. Saline water is just water, in short. With just, imewekwa tu msalapa kidogo alafu inakuwa. Imeombewa alafu inakuwa, So really, I mean, we have to be serious as Kenyans. It cannot be business as usual. So the best we can do for those people who are in transition, the best we can do for the people who are in transition is for them to tell us, okay, what do they need to complete the transition? We are ready to engage. But to tell us that when they lay to, let's go on, like, no, we have to think about that. We have said, for example, we are imposing a 30% duty on imported furniture. Why are we importing furniture, good people from China and all manner of places, when we have our young people from Tibet, we have Kali. Explain to me, there is no reason. Sindio? Hakuna, there is no reason. So we just stop it, alafu tuendelee na ile kazi tuko naye hapa. We will shortly have developed the industry enough, not just to make our own products, but when we give them a market, they will improve in their quality, and shortly we will be exporting furniture to other places. That is the trajectory we want to go. That is what is in the finance bill. We have also said, why are we importing paint? For heaven's sake. Ngumi here says it is possible to manufacture paint in Kenya. Why are we have said in our budget, we do not have to import paint. Let us support local manufacture. I like what my good friend from the pharmaceutical has said. He has said that we need to encourage local manufacture. That industry is like 300 billion shilling industry. 70% we are importing. 60% is generics. These are just things we can manufacture locally here. And that is why we have done two things. We have said in the budget this year, deliberate. Two things. We have said manufacturers will pay of human vaccines and medicine will pay a lower corporate tax than the others to give leverage to those who want to manufacture in Kenya. Number two, we have removed tax on equipment and materials for manufacture of pharmaceuticals in Kenya. Again, to support our universal health coverage and to make medicine affordable in Kenya. It is there in the budget. I don't know why people are not reading. I don't know whether we understand one another. So we are being deliberate. When we are talking about, when you see there, we are saying pharmaceuticals. We have made policy interventions in the budget to clearly support the manufacture of pharmaceuticals in Kenya because it will save us foreign exchange. As my good brother said there, it will give us the assurance that if anything happens anywhere, we can manufacture our own medicine and we will not be stranded with sick people. Are we together? So that is a value chain that we need to work on, and we have made policy interventions. We have put it in the budget to support that sector. And if there is anything, for the people who work in that sector, if there is anything additional you want us to do, please tell us, because we want to engage with every sector so that we can support the incentives around there. I have heard you clearly, and you are right. On the housing, I have heard you say two things. Mesema, governance is an issue. Number two, you have said, maybe not now, maybe later. Yeah? Those are the two things I had. So, governance, yes. Governance is an issue. But let me ask you, good people of Kenya, are we going to stop a whole project that can hire 1 million young people every year? A project that will support our industrialization agenda, those who produce cement, those who produce steel, those who produce doors, those who produce hinges and windows, the architects, the quantity surveyors, the electricians, the masons, the carpenters who are supposed to work in that space. Are we going to stop the whole of that exercise because we are not sure about governance? I have given my personal undertaking. The buck will stop at my desk. And I intend to take responsibility. I will not assign it to the next person. Because the millions of young people in Kenya who are walking our streets are an emergency for us. We cannot continue to say, maybe we should try it another time, maybe we should try it another day. I want to persuade you, good people. Yeah? We must sort out the governance issue. And I have said that we are going to develop the structure. Kenya Association of Manufacturers, we want them to sit in the board. We want every other person to sit in the board that will manage the housing fund, so that we can all see, I mean, unless you're telling me as the Kenya Association of Manufacturers you don't trust yourselves. Unless you're telling me you have a serious governance problem. You know, and if you do, you'd better tell us so that we can help you sort it out. So we will sort that out. Number two, you've said you don't know whether we should do it now or later. Let me tell you, and let me just say, on that issue of governance, it is actually the classic case of throwing out the baby together with the bathwater. You know, we must be careful. We must know how do we sort out governance without killing the big project that is supposed to turn around our country. You have also said maybe we should wait. Maybe the situation is not correct. This project has been with us for 5 years. We started in 2018. This is now 2023. We are in the time scale of Singapore, we are 60 years late. I don't know whether we need to be 61 years late. Surely. I think let's just agree. It is now or never. Let us just do this thing and let us get ourselves moving. It is a little tightening of the belt here and there. I know my good brother of e-mobility, you are spot on. And by the way, in this year's finance bill, we have put the tax incentives you are asking for in this year's tax bill, yeah, finance bill, on issues of taxation, on e-mobility, on issue of chargers, and I have instructed Moses to make sure that they are with clarity, including the lithium maneno, because I want to launch that program later this year, and we want to transit from using fossil fuels, from using diesel or petrol or kerosene on our pikipikis and two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and save ourselves the kind of money. We are spending $500 million every month to import our fuel products. We can cut that down by half if we go the direction that Goodman is saying, if we go the direction that we have put in our finance bill this year. Tunaelewana jameni? So, you are spot on. And I just needed, I spoke to the chair of the Finance Committee 2 days ago, just to make sure that nothing untoward happens on that particular subject. On the slaughterhouses, I think the governors have heard. I think we just need to put our act together. The complaint, it is small. Rao is exaggerating it kidogo. And by the way, Rao is selling very good leather. The leather you buy in Dubai, Rao can sell it to you at 1/3 of the price. I am a testimony. I have bought leather from Rao at 30% what you would get in Dubai from our own livestock. Yeah, not imported. So thank you very much, Rao, for what your sector, and it is true. We've had several meetings in my office, we've had several meetings elsewhere, and that's why we have put resources in that corner. I want to ask my good friends, governors, what is important is how to manage our slaughterhouses, the knives we are using, the flaying. You know, many times we lose a whole hide or a whole skin because of the knife we are using, and it's not expensive. We can all agree on how that can be managed, and we can also all agree on how that whole infrastructure is set up so that there is no duplication and there is no overlapping. We can structure it properly. I think we have some homework there as policymakers, especially the governors and myself. We have some homework on what to do in that particular section. I know, for example, the Nini in West Pokot is complete. The abattoir in West Pokot is complete. I know the one for Isiolo is almost complete. We have one in Mandera. We have one in Wajir. We have one in Marsabit. We need to, consolidate our thoughts and see who does what. I know, for example, we have a big effort that we are working on in Naivasha on leather, and and I was supposed to negotiate more land for Naivasha, so we are working on it. And of course, we need to have at least 4 or 5 clusters of where we can produce our leather products. So I think my team has worked on some clusters. We will need to discuss with the counties so that we agree on where the clusters will be. We will also need to agree on how we can put together, common user facilities. We can employ many people if we have common user, like what we have in Karioko, that can produce how many pairs of shoes, I think? 3,000 per day. We can do that elsewhere. And the project we are making is we want to see how it is possible for us, all our 14 million kids in school, instead of wearing plastic from all manner of places, they should be able to wear shoes from our own livestock. And we can be able to get those shoes better with a price that is affordable to all of us, and we can agree how that can be funded. I see many counties funding school milk. We can also do school shoes, and we can partner to make sure that all our kids are sitting good in school, not bare feet like the way all of us did when we went to school. So I also, this morning, I was talking to Governor Waiguru about how we need to bring our TVETs, because you had Rao say footwear training on footwear and that whole ecosystem there. And I was speaking with my dear sister here, very relaxed. I was talking with her. She was actually the first person I called in the morning. And I was telling her that we need a small meeting between the Ministry of Education and the counties so that we can harmonize the curriculum between your vocational training institutions at the county and our TVETs, so that that whole chain speaks to our manufacturing. How do we train others at the lower level of certificate in the lower cadres? And by the way, I am willing to help. You know, the way we have improved on our TVETs, we can do the same with our vocational training centers that are under the counties. So we can, again, that is a space where I requested Governor Ann to provide some leadership, and then we can talk and see how we can support people like Rao and all the others in that space. Let me also say, Madam Gumi said there are so many people that are being trained by different people. And they are wondering how we can mainstream these people who already have skills. The good news, Madam, I don't know, did I get your name right? Ngumi. Ngumi, yeah. That we now have recognition of prior learning as a mechanism of bringing those people and certifying them as people who have skills, and they can be given certification papers and they can go forward and work. So we have changed the law so that our TVETs can issue certificates for recognition of prior learning, especially people who have skills whom they have developed because of where they were working. I don't know. I think, I don't know whether I have answered many of the issues that were, oh, energy. Yeah, there is one issue around energy. And even before I go to energy, I know Wanga talked about seeds. And I agree with you, Wanga, that if you give out seeds that do not, you are in so much trouble. I don't know, there is somebody who gave out seeds. Wambora ran. Wambora was impeached twice. Over seeds. So it's a very risky venture, I agree. But I have discussed with my minister for trade. In fact, I am going to personally visit, I think, 2 countries, the ones we agreed, who will assist us with cotton seed, because we need scale. You know, we are running short of time. We may not have time to develop our own in good time. So we might have to import some seeds. So I will travel to 1 or 2 countries in the next maybe in the next 2 weeks, so that we can be sure. And they have asked me to go and speak to the president of some 2 countries, let me not say which ones, so that they can allow us to import their seeds and see how we can fast track that process. That is very important to us, because we need to move together. On issue of energy, I think the immediate intervention that we are making is, number 1, on the special economic zones, we are trying to develop a tariff for the special economic zones. That's number 1. But that will not be enough, you know. We have to think of all the other manufacturers that are not in our special economic zones, and what do we do with them? It's a conversation we are having. 2 things that we are doing, as Jir was saying, the governor of Wajir, about Ketraco. We are changing the model in Ketraco. We were using government money to develop transmission lines. We want the private sector to develop transmission lines. We will pay them a willing charge when we use it to transport our energy. The law is already there, so we are in discussion with people who can invest in transmission lines. That's number 1. Number 2, we've just agreed on reforming Kenya Power and Lighting Corporation. It is overdue. We have a lot of manenos there, so we are dissecting it so that we can, because number 1, we are losing between 20 and 30% of all our energy, which we pay for, but we don't consume, because it gets lost somewhere. It is because of many things, let me not say. So we are working on Kenya Power. We have agreed on our development partners on what we need to do. We have new management at Kenya Power, so we are working at it, because the cost of power, as has been said here, is a major issue, especially speaking to our global competitiveness. I think that is one of the issues Caro will tell us we need to do something about. So I hope I have said, I think I've spoken to the issues that were raised. If there are any other issues, I am still available to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And yes, you have responded to a majority of the issues that have been asked, and any others, like you've said, will be asked later. Carol, as the private sector, the President has spoken. I'm sure you want to ask him when you want to meet next. So please, as we conclude.
Thank you, Your Excellency. You've made your commitments. We've heard from the governors, and we've made our commitments, Your Excellency. So my only commitment to you is that I'll rally these people twice a year to meet with you and the governors, and so that at least we can, how many? Okay.
Your Excellency, Carlo just spoiled my party, because I had already booked on your calendar to meet every 3 months, so that...
He's even made it better.
So that, and I think I want to echo the governor of Bungoma, what he has said about next time we meet, it's not stories. It is what have we achieved. Your Excellency, we were here in February in Naivasha, and here today we reported some progress on some few areas like KIBs and all that. We hope that on the second week of September, after you host the climate summit, we will meet again, see what everybody has done. And Your Excellency, you know, you've given me a wonderful team of governors to work with. You can just judge by how attentive they were. In fact, it's only the phone of Governor of Bungoma which rang only once. And he assured me it was Yesu Watongaren who was calling. There was no other reason. So we are going to meet again. All the governors, this is what you have achieved. This is the KIBs you have rolled out. Private sector says, even my good friend Rajan, the chairman of KAM, will have gotten saved by that time and will move forward. Thank you very much.
By the way, let me, in a very special way, congratulate governors on their commitment to the county aggregation and industrial parks. I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, many governors did not even wait for the budget. Some of them went and adjusted their budgets and put in money. You have my commitment on that issue. That is one thing we must get off the ground and done with. Hopefully, in the next 1 year, they should be working. And by the way, I have secured some resources to equip those county aggregation and industrial parks. So, tuko sawa. So, nyinyi mjipange hapo. Hawa watu ya private sector tutawasukuma.
Your Excellency, thank you. I was worried about your calendar overwhelming it, but your CS has committed you. So every 3 months we'll rally, and including the other value chains that we didn't talk about, tea and others, and make sure that the private sector commitments that we've made, we come and give you progress. So kama unataka kutuchapa, unatuchapa hapo. Kama tujaendelea vile tumesema. So that's really what I wanted to say. And